Welcome to Creepy Vibes. Today, we're hitting the road, but not just any road. These are the haunted veins of Texas where even the most seasoned truckers slam on the brakes. Highways where the air goes still, shadows move wrong, and time doesn't. Always pass the way it should. These are 20 true Texas routes that veteran truckers now avoid, not myths, not stories, real places marked by fear, disappearances, and things no one can explain. But before we begin, there's something strange. Most viewers vanish without subscribing. They come for one scare, but miss the worst of what's coming. Don't be one of them. Hit that subscribe button now, because once you start this ride, there's no turning back. So tell me, where are you watching from and what time is it there? Because out here, it doesn't matter what the clock says. When the wrong road finds you, it's already too late. Let's dive into darkness. They say Texas doesn't hide its dead. It just buries them shallow and waits for the wind to remember where. Most of the time, that wind is just hot air off the desert, stirring dust and old regrets. But sometimes, just sometimes, it brings something else. Something that makes even hard men forget how to speak, how to breathe. That's what happened to Donnie Ruiz. The thing is, before that night, he was one of those guys who thought horror stories were for the weak-minded. The kind of man who laughed at ghost tailies over cheap coffee and truck stop diners. He'd been driving long haul since he was 21, and by 98, he had 1,000 nights of highway behind him, half of them spent on roads more empty than any grave. But none of that had prepared him for what waited on Highway 277 near Devils. Cross turned out it was late June, and the sun had just peeled off the horizon like it was too tired to hang around any longer. Donnie was pushing a shipment of copper wire down to Del Rio, running behind after a delay in Abilene. His rig, a 92 Peterbilt he called Rosita, had never failed him before, not even in the blizzard outside Amarillo or the time a drunk driver sideswiped him outside Midland. That night, though, she started hiccuping just past Eagle Pass. Not hard at first, just a little stutter in the RPMs, a flicker in the dash lights, the kind of thing you chalk up to old wiring or a loose battery cable. But it got worse quick out by the time he hit mile marker 239, the one with the bullet holes. Punched through it like someone used it for target practice. The rig cut out completely. No sputter. No warning. The engine just went silent like it had been suffocated. Even the CB went dead. Donnie coasted onto the gravel shoulder, letting Rosita roll to a soft stop under a sky that suddenly felt too dark. He tried the ignition again. Nothing. No lights, no turnover, not even a click. Just him, his truck, and a black Texas night that had grown a little too quiet, like the air was holding its breath. He popped the hood and climbed down, cursing as he reached for the flashlight under the seat. The smell hit him before he got all the way out, diesel, but not fresh. It was older, fouler, tinged with something like burned hair or meat left too long in the sun. He swept the beam of the flashlight along the edge of the road and saw nothing out of the ordinary. No fluids leaking. No smoke, but the smell wouldn't quit. It seemed to seep from the gravel itself. Donnie stood there for a minute, unsure what to do. He hadn't passed another vehicle in over an hour. He remembered a service station maybe 3 or 4 miles back, not the kind that shows up on Google. Just one of those old forgotten stations with a peeling Texaco star and busted Coke machine out front. He figured it might be worth a shot. Even if it was boarded up, maybe there was a phone. Maybe someone still lived nearby. He grabbed his flashlight, locked up the rig, and started walking. The road seemed longer than it should have been. The kind of long that made your boots feel like anchors and your heartbeat too loud in your ears. After a while, even the crickets stopped. The air pressed in heavy, hot and still, and the smell god, that smell clung to his clothes, crawled into his nose, filled every breath. It reminded him of something he couldn't quite name. A funeral home, maybe, an old meat freezer on a summer day. The kind of stink that makes your brain want to forget it exists. When he saw the lights, he thought he was hallucinating. A yellow glow flickering behind dusty glass windows, the neon outline of a gas pump barely visible beneath layers of grime. The station was squat and rectangular, the kind of place that looked like it hadn't seen a customer since the Carter administration. But the light was on, and the door was open a crack. Donnie stepped up onto the concrete pad and peered inside. That's when he saw him. The man stood behind the counter, still as a photograph. Tall, well over 6 feet with broad shoulders under. A long black preacher's coat that reached all the way down to scuffed leather boots. He didn't move, didn't speak. Just stood there, hands resting flat on the countertop. Donnie opened the door slowly, the bell above it broken or missing. The smell inside was worse. Dense, like something rotting in the walls. He took a step forward. "Hey," he said, his voice hoarse in the stillness. Truck broke down a few miles up. "You got a phone?" The man didn't answer. "Sir?" Donnie tried again, stepping closer. The man tilted his head slightly, like a dog hearing something far away. The light hit his face then, and Donnie's mouth went dry. Where the man's eyes should have been, there was only smooth skin taut. And pale, stretched over blank sockets, not burned. Not injured, just ... wrong. Like he'd never had eyes to begin with. Like something had made him that way. Donnie staggered back. The man stepped forward. The coat made no sound as it moved. The smell surged with him, thick as smoke. Donnie turned and bolted. He ran, hard. No looking back, no slowing down. The gas station behind him disappeared into the dark like a mirage. And the road stretched out in front of him endlessly. His legs screamed, lungs burned, but he kept going. The darkness pressed closer. Somewhere behind him, he thought he heard footsteps, but they didn't sound right. Too slow, too even. Like something walking only because it had learned how by watching the living. When Donnie finally reached Rosita, the cab light was on. He hadn't left it on. He clambered into the cab, locked the doors, and sat in the driver's seat shaking. The flashlight was gone. His boots were soaked with sweat. He sat there until the sky began to pale with dawn. The truck started on the first try when the sheriff showed up later that morning, called in by a passing car that spotted Donnie's rig abandoned on the shoulder. He listened to the story with polite disbelief. He drove back up the road, following Donnie's directions to the station. There was nothing there. Just a crumbled foundation half swallowed by weeds, rusted rebar sticking out like broken teeth. The outline of old pumps could barely be seen in the dirt, and the air still smelled faintly of fuel and hair. Scorched grass lined the fence, and in the gravel, the sheriff saw something he didn't mention in his report prints. Large and sunken, as if someone very heavy had been walking in slow circles. They weren't shaped quite right. Too long, too narrow, and too deep. Donnie never drove that stretch of road again. Some nights, if he'd had one too many beers, he'd talk about it, about the man with no eyes, about the silence that felt like a voice waiting to speak, about the gas station that shouldn't have been there. He once said he thought that part of Texas wasn't really part of Texas at all, not anymore. Like something had folded a crack into the world and forgotten to seal it shut. And if you ask, the older truckers at the rest stops, the ones with gray in their beards and a look in their eyes like they've seen too much, they'll tell you the same thing. Stay off 277 near Devil's Cross Turn, because out there, the dead don't stay. Buried. And the road remembers every scream. FM 666, The Devil's Bypass. That's what the old-timers call it, half laughing through crooked teeth as they sip Lone Star under yellow porch lights. They say it like it's a joke, but there's a tightness in their voices, like they know. It ain't. The road stretches between Robstown and Driscoll just 20, maybe 25 miles of cracked asphalt running through cotton country, but it has a reputation. The kind that keeps people from taking it twice. Most folks stick to Highway 77 now. It's longer, but they say it's worth it not to hear children crying through your radio at 2 a.m. or watch the clouds turn the color of split limes over dead fields that don't sway when the wind howls out the first time. I heard about FM 666. I was 16. My Uncle Rick used to run loads between Corpus and Kingsville. Old ranch stuff, diesel parts, sometimes scrap. He was a straight talker, not the superstitious type, but one night over turkey and beers he started telling my dad about the black van. He said it followed him for half the road. No plates, no lights, not even a driver he could see, just a black silhouette in the rear view, hugging him close for miles. When he pulled over, it didn't pass. Just disappeared. Vanished. Like fog. The kicker? When he got home, the back of his truck was open, his cargo gone, and his dog Ranger, a red heeler who never left his side, was missing from the passenger seat. Never found. I laughed at the time, thought he was messing with me. But Rick didn't laugh back. He just stared out the window like he could still see that van in the dark. I didn't set foot on FM 666 until years later. I'd forgotten about Rick's story mostly. Life moved on. I got a job with a fabrication company in Corpus, had to drive out to a farm equipment site near Driscoll to drop off some welding tools and custom steel plates. GPS, as it often does, rerouted me. Traffic on 77 was clogged from a wreck. Fastest route, it chirped, and I didn't even notice what road I was on until I passed the sun-faded green sign that read Farm to Market Road 666. At first, nothing felt off. It was late afternoon, the sun hanging low behind a haze of clouds, the kind that makes the whole world look sepia-toned. The road was empty, just 2 lanes lined by flat cotton fields, telephone poles bending slightly toward the west like they were trying to whisper to each other. The cotton looked dry, almost gray, and the air smelled faintly like something burnt long ago. Maybe an old brush fire. Maybe something else. 10 minutes in, I saw the van. It was maybe 100 yards behind me at first. I only noticed because my rear view flickered. The sun caught the windshield, or I thought it did. Black van, older model, maybe a Dodge, with no plates, no markings, no lights. It was there 1 minute, gone the next, then back again. I blinked, rubbed my eyes. It was still there. Close now. I don't scare easy, but something in my gut started to crawl. I pressed the gas. My truck wasn't new, but it had decent pickup. I watched the van in the mirror. It didn't get smaller. Didn't get bigger either. Just stayed the same distance behind me, as if it were tied to my bumper by some invisible thread. I hit 75, then 80. The road blurred. The cotton fields whipped by like white ghosts, unmoving, dead still despite the wind slapping my mirrors. But the van? Still there. Closer now. So close I could see the windshield, but not what was behind it. Just blackness. Not tinted glass, real black. Like a hole in the world. Then the radio crackled. I'd had it off, but suddenly it sputtered to life, all static and high-pitched whines like someone tuning through 1,000 haunted stations. I reached for the dial. That's when I heard it, kids, children crying. Faint but clear, like a recording from an old tape deck, warped and distant. One of them was humming. Something off-key. Maybe a lullaby. Or maybe just a sound a kid makes when they're trying not to scream. I nearly ran off the road. Slamming the brakes, I veered toward the shoulder, dust rising around me like a curtain. The van was gone. I looked left, right, behind, nothing. Just empty fields and road, no tire tracks, no movement. Only the sound of that low wind and my own heart trying to punch through my ribs. I waited. 5 minutes, 10. The sun started to dip under the horizon, and the sky shifted in color, not the usual amber or rose, but a sickly green like antifreeze. The clouds turned with it, writhing like snakes in water. That's when the air got thick, heavy, like trying to breathe underwater. I turned off the ignition and listened. Nothing. No birds, no bugs, no passing trucks or far-off dogs. Just the wind, which wasn't even moving the cotton dot, and then the whispering started. Not in the radio this time. All around me. Coming from the fields. Soft at first, then growing hundreds of voices, whispering things I couldn't understand. Different tones, different ages. Some low, some breathy, others like children talking through tears. I couldn't tell what they were saying, but I knew what they meant. They didn't want me there. I threw the truck in drive and peeled out. Dirt kicked up behind me as I roared back onto the road. I drove blind, just trying to outrun whatever was crawling its way out of that field. I didn't look back, not once. The sky stayed green the whole time, even after I hit 77 again. Not until I passed into Driscoll did it finally fade back to blue-gray, like nothing had ever happened. The clock on my dash said 6:42 p.m. I'd left Corpus around 4:15. The trip should. That taken less than an hour. It had been almost 3. I didn't talk about it for weeks. Thought maybe I hallucinated. Maybe a migraine. Some gas leak in the truck. But then I checked the dash cam. Static. Wall-to-wall static. Not a single frame of footage, but the audio? It was there. Crackles. A low hum. And for exactly 10 minutes where the GPS showed, I was between mile markers. 12 and 13, you could hear children crying. One voice stands out. A little girl. She whispers something again and again. Took me hours to decipher it. Played. It threw every filter I had. Let us out. That's all she says. Over and over. Let us out. Since then, I've looked into the history of FM 666. Old maps don't show it. Not before 1954. Some say the county paved it over an older road, something that predated modern routes. Rumors float around buses that went missing in the 60s, bodies found in irrigation ditches with no IDs, radios picking up police chatter. From states away, my Uncle Rick, he moved to Oklahoma 2 years ago, said Texas roads ain't what they used to be. When I asked about Ranger, his face went gray. Some dogs don't make it back, he said, but they ain't gone, not really. I still have the dashcam file. People think it's fake, even after they hear it. But I know what I heard, what I felt. I haven't driven FM 666 since. But sometimes late at night, I swear I see that van parked across the street from my apartment, just sitting in the shadows, engine off, lights cold, waiting. Route 281 between Falfurrias and Kingsville is a strange stretch of Texas blacktop, long and quiet and flat, edged by thorny mesquites and vast expanses of sandy scrubland that look unchanged. Since before man put fence posts in the earth, it's the kind of road you forget as soon as you leave it, except it doesn't seem to forget you. Locals know better than to linger out there after dark. Border Patrol runs the checkpoint just north of Falfurrias, but even they stay clear of the stretch past mile marker 237 once the sun dips below the horizon. Unofficially, they call that zone El Silencio, no real reason given. They just say their radios stop working out there sometimes. Say there are places where the brush moves without wind and where they pick up signals in languages no one recognizes. But they never put it in a report, Truckers have a dozen names for it. The Black Mile, the Grinning Route, the Mirror Road. Most of them won't take it at night unless they're behind on a delivery and too proud to admit they're scared. The ones who do, well, the ones who talk about it don't drive it more than once. I was born in San Antonio, raised in Alice, and I've driven freight all my life. Ran produce from the Valley to Dallas. Cheap electronics from Laredo to Houston. That stretch of 281 between Falfurrias and Kingsville? I avoided it when I could, but I was never superstitious. Not really. I figured stories were stories. And I needed the job. It was early September, just past the tail end of the storm season. The heat hadn't broken yet. 88 degrees. At midnight, and the humidity lay over the land like wet wool. I'd picked up a late-night haul-used auto parts from Edinburgh going to Corpus Christi. Had to take 281 north to get to 77, and I figured if I hit Falfurrias by 10, I'd be in Kingsville before midnight. No trouble. I remember passing through the checkpoint around 10:30 p.m. One agent leaned into the cab, flashlight in hand. Young. Guy. His face was drawn tight like he hadn't slept in days. He didn't ask the usual questions. Just peered around the cab, then into my eyes like he was trying to read something under the surface. You headed through the scrub tonight? He asked. I told him, yeah. Stay on the main line, he said. Don't stop. No matter what you see. It struck me as odd, but I'd heard border guys say weird things before. Half of them spend so long in the brush they start to believe it's alive. Still, something about the way he said it stuck with me. Flat, emotionless. Like he wasn't warning me. Just stating a fact he no longer questioned. I passed the checkpoint and dropped into the black stretch that runs north past the scrublands. No towns, no side roads. Just dust, brush, and the odd barbed wire fence that goes on forever. I kept my speed steady, music low. I don't remember what I was listening to. It didn't matter. About 15 minutes north, I saw movement in the mirror. At first I thought it was nothing. Maybe a coyote. Maybe one of those weird desert deer that roam too far from water. But it kept up. 30 miles an hour. 40. 50. The thing was too fast for a person. I thought maybe it was a car with no lights, but every time I checked, the side mirror, there was no shape, just a figure in the distance. Walking, not running, not stumbling. Walking. Perfectly upright, like someone out for a calm stroll under the stars. Long strides, gait like a man in a business suit crossing an office lobby. I didn't slow down. I didn't stop. I didn't do anything except drive. I looked again. It was closer. The details were wrong. No reflection in the chrome. No shine in the eyes. The face was pale, but I couldn't see features. Not even a nose. Just smooth, skin-colored emptiness. I blinked. Closer still. Just off the back of my trailer now. No noise. No footsteps. No wind. Just the steady hum of my wheels and the terrible silence of that road. The kind of silence that presses in behind your ears and makes your breathing feel too loud. I turned up the radio. Static. Full-blown, throat-choking static. Like every station had gone dead. The mirrors started to fog from the inside. I wiped them down with a cloth, trying not to look at what I knew was there. Just past the curve of the glass. I looked anyway. It had stopped walking. Now it was standing directly behind my cab. Not clinging, not climbing. Just there like it had always been part of the rig. Like it had grown from the frame. Its face was turned toward me now. What should have been a face? It was blank, smooth, pale. But its attention burned through the mirror like a heat lamp. I could feel it looking at me. Not at the truck. Not at the road. At me. My hands were slick with sweat. The wheel felt distant, rubbery, like I wasn't really holding it anymore. I kept glancing at the mirrors, even when I tried not to. The thing didn't move, but somehow it felt closer every time. I looked. Then I heard something in the sleeper. Not movement. Breathing. Long, slow, deliberate breaths. The sound of someone exhaling behind me. Calm and patient. I didn't look. I would not look. I kept my eyes forward, fixed on the endless road, praying for the lights of Kingsville or at least another car. A gas station. Anything. But there was nothing. Just the dark and the breathing and the blank face behind me. I must have passed into Kingsville around 11:50, but I don't remember the transition. 1 minute the road was black and empty, and the next I saw the glow of street lamps and the blurry outline of a love station. I pulled in, cut the engine, and sat there shaking. The mirrors were cracked. All of them, not shattered from a rock. Cracked from the inside, as if something had pushed outward against the glass. Long, thin spiderweb patterns etched like frost. I reached out to touch one and saw a small smear of blood on the edge. My hand, a thin cut I hadn't noticed, like I'd tried to grab something in a dream. When I finally stepped out of the truck, the air felt too quiet, not peaceful, sterile. Like the world had been scrubbed clean of all noise, like I was inside a vacuum chamber. I asked the guy at the register if he'd heard anything strange lately. He just nodded like he didn't. Want to say too much. They walk with you sometimes, he said. The ones with no faces. They follow quiet trucks, ones that don't carry laughter. They don't like joy. They like emptiness. I asked what they were. He just shrugged. Don't stop next time. Don't ever stop. I left and never drove. That road again. Found another route, even if it took me 2 hours longer. A lot of us did. Truckers talk, and over time the stories came out. One guy said he saw 3 of them walking in the brush, all in step. Another said he saw one standing in the center of the road, and when he swerved, he found deep handprints in the side of his trailer, like something had pushed it back into lane. One man claimed he looked in his sleeper mirror and saw his own face staring back, but the eyes were gone, just black sockets. When he got home, his wife said he didn't blink for a week. Border Patrol stopped patrolling the scrub zone entirely at night after 2021. No explanation. They shifted the checkpoint activity to daylight hours only and said it was for safety. They never said what kind of safety. But if you ask the old-timers at the diner in Falfurrias, the ones who drink their coffee with 4 sugars and never smile, they'll tell you flat out, something walks in the brush at night. Something that doesn't want to be seen, yet always ends up in the mirror. And if you see it once, really see it, you'll never stop seeing it, even with your eyes closed. Especially with your eyes closed. Sometimes late at night, I dream. I'm back in that cab, radio dead, mirrors fogging, road empty. And breathing behind me. Always breathing. Highway 59 between Beeville and George West. Looks like any other rural stretch of South Texas road if you check it on a map. Just another black line cutting through mesquite scrub and empty cattle land. But for folks who drive it for a living, especially after dark, it's got a reputation they don't talk about much. Long haulers, livestock haulers, oil field workers, they'll take the road in daylight, sure. But ask them where they stop at night and they'll all say the same thing. Anywhere but there. It's not that the highway is dangerous in the usual way. It's well paved, traffic's light, troopers rarely patrol it. No, it's something else. Something you only notice if you pull over between midnight and 3 a.m. Something about shadows. Guy named Ellis Thornton found that out the hard way. Ellis was 62. Been driving rigs since he was 19. Old school type clean logbooks, black coffee in a thermos. Refused to use GPS. Said it gave the government too much control. Liked to pull. often sleep without paying for truck stop showers or late-night burgers. Said it kept him grounded. That was how he ended up just south of George West, about 6 miles before the 59 meets up with 281, pulled over into the gravel easement around 12:45 a.m., parked the cab, and shut off the engine. The load he was hauling, canned soup out of San Antonio, wasn't due in Corpus till morning. He figured he'd catch a few hours in the sleeper cab. He didn't get much rest. According to what he told his dispatcher later, Ellis drifted off. Fast, dead tired, but then something woke him up. He thought it was a tapping noise at first, something light, like knuckles on glass. When he sat up, the cab was pitch black, but his interior lights flicked once, just for a second. Enough to cast his own shadow against the back of the cab. Only it wasn't right. The shadow was wrong. It bent toward him. Not in a way light naturally casts. It was like the silhouette wanted something. It curved in on itself, like arms reaching where they shouldn't, shoulders sloped forward like a dog crawling under a fence. He said the damn thing didn't even match his shape. His cap was gone, but the shadow still had it on. And the hand, it was missing 2 fingers. Ellis had all 10 of his. He bolted out the door with the flashlight on his keychain, heart pounding. Stood there in the humid blackness of that South Texas night, listening. Crickets, nothing else. The kind of silence that eats at your ears. He scanned around with the flashlight, swearing, checking the brush. No movement, no coyotes, no feral hogs. He climbed back into the cab, turned on the dome light, and that's when he saw the photo on the dash. He didn't put it there. It was a Polaroid, curling at the edges. Showed a woman, maybe in her 30s, standing in front of some old pier by a river. The wood behind her was rotted, mossy, and warped. She had dark hair, wet at the ends, and was smiling, but not like someone happy. More like someone scared. Trying to hide it. The photo reeked. Not like rot. Not like engine oil, like river water, algae and fish and decaying wood. It made Ellis gag. He flicked it out the window, started the engine, and drove till dawn. He didn't sleep again for 3 days. Didn't tell anyone until he finally broke down at a rest stop in Victoria, shaking and ranting about shadows and women in pictures. They thought he'd had a stroke. He hadn't. They checked. I heard the story from a guy named Ronnie Delgado, another trucker who'd run that stretch for decades. He said he believed Ellis, said he'd seen something too. Not the photo. Not the shadow. But once, years back, around 2:10 a.m., he pulled over to check a weird sound in his trailer. Thought maybe the reefer unit was acting up. When he stepped out and looked, his own shadow leaned east toward the Gulf, even though the moon was behind. Him in the west. When he turned to look, there wasn't anything there. But when he climbed back into the cab, his boots were soaked through with river mud. No rivers out there, just dry land. Some caliche roads and mesquite trees. He told me that. And I figured it was trucker bullshit. Just stories they pass around like ghost tales in a break room. Until last November, when I tried it myself. I'm not a trucker. I'm a journalist. Used to be anyway. Got laid off from the Express News 2 years ago and started doing freelance pieces for some regional magazines. Texas folklore, weird history, that sort of thing. Someone in a Facebook group posted about Highway 59 and the photo, and I figured, why not? I rented a Ford Transit van, loaded it with gear, and parked off the shoulder a little after midnight on a Tuesday. Weather was good. Clear sky, almost no moon. I brought a thermos, notebook, field recorder, and a digital camera. I even set up a trail cam outside on a tripod, just in case. And I waited. Nothing happened for the first hour. A couple trucks passed, high beams cutting across the brush. The temperature dropped a bit. Around 1:30, I turned off the interior lights. and sat in the darkness, staring out the windshield. That's when I saw movement. At first, I thought it was my own reflection. But it wasn't Dot, it was my shadow Dot. There was just enough starlight to cast faint shapes on the dashboard. And I swear to you, my shadow was shifting. Not twitching like a trick of the eye, but bending. Like something was pulling it toward the steering wheel. The arms extended, longer than they should have been. One hand pointed toward the passenger seat. I felt cold. Not the achy kind. Deep cold like lake water in January. I reached for the dome light, flipped it on, and saw dirt on my hands. Real dirt, packed under my fingernails. Damp and dark like riverbank silt. The van doors had stayed locked. I hadn't left the cab. But my boots were caked with it too, the floor mat soaked. Then I saw it, a photograph. Curled and old, sitting perfectly centered on the passenger seat Dot, it showed the same woman Ellis described. Standing in front of that warped pier, smiling with too many teeth, her hair tangled and wet. But behind her, this time, something was rising out of the water. I couldn't tell what it was. Just the suggestion of shoulders, maybe limbs. It was black and glossy, like river rocks, but its shape made no sense. Too narrow in some places, too wide in others. And the woman, her smile looked like it had been drawn on, like someone stretched. Her mouth with wire and pulled it up like a mask. I gagged. The smell coming off that photo was overpowering. Not just water now. Blood, maybe. Rust and rot. I flung it out the window and sped the hell back to Beeville. I went back for the trail cam in the morning. The footage was corrupted, static. High-pitched whine like a cassette tape stuck in fast forward. But for one frame, just one, I caught a blur. Not a person. Not an animal. Something tall, almost spider-like, standing in the brush across the road. Watching the van Dot, I don't go near Highway 59 anymore. I talked to the sheriff's department. They just shrugged. Said sometimes they get calls about shadow things, but it's mostly kids on meth or old men with dementia. One deputy admitted, off the record, that a body had been found near the area in '83. A woman, partially submerged, stuck under an old pier. No ID. She'd been there a while, skin sloughed off. Her photo never matched any missing persons case. She's buried in an unmarked grave in Beeville. I asked if I could see her autopsy photo. He said no, but before I left, he looked at me and said something that chilled me more than anything else. They say she's still looking for someone, or something. And when she looks at you through that photo, sometimes you end up where she drowned. I don't sleep much anymore. Not because I'm scared of the dark, because I know the shadow in my room isn't always mine. Loop 375 skirts the edge of El Paso like a cracked halo, coiling near the edge of the Franklin Mountains and stretching south into the Chihuahuan Desert, where the U.S.-Mexico border seems more like a suggestion than a line. Truckers call it the border highway, but everyone else just calls it Loop. If you've driven it at night, especially in that dead stretch between mile markers 46 and 47, you know something's off. Doesn't matter if you're hauling produce, migrants, or military. Hardware, every driver with more than a few years under their belt has a story about the Loop. Most keep quiet. The ones who talk, well, they never tell it the same way twice. But they all agree on one thing: that stretch of road is wrong. They say the first time anyone really noticed something was up was in '97, when a Border Patrol agent drove off the Loop and straight into a ravine. They found his SUV 40 feet below, engine cold, driver's side door wide open. No sign of the agent. His radio had been ripped out of the dash and tossed into the back seat, and there were bloody handprints, small ones on the windshield. Like a child had pressed their palms against the glass from the inside. No missing children had been reported. The agent's body was never recovered. They wrote it off as fatigue, heat stroke. You don't get promotions in El Paso by believing in ghosts. But that wasn't the last time something strange happened. Not by a long shot. The most recent story, the one that actually made it into the Regional Transportation Safety Database, buried under unresolved anomalies, happened to a guy named Raymond Castillo. Ray had been hauling refrigerated freight between Tucson and Laredo for 10 years, mostly meat and dairy, sometimes organs packed in dry ice for transplant. Quiet, hard-working guy, not superstitious. Not the kind of guy who'd make a scene unless he really believed what he was saying. His dispatcher said he showed up 2 hours late, pale as paper and shaking. Wouldn't unload the trailer. Wouldn't even go near it. Just sat in the cab of his Peterbilt, cradling a thermos of black coffee like it was the only thing holding him together. He kept muttering the same phrase over and over. They were inside the trailer when they finally opened it. Up hazmat crew on standby just in case. Everything looked normal at first glance. The pallets were in place, shrink-wrapped, frosted from the Sub-Zero tong. Manifest matched the load exactly. But then they saw the prints. Bloody, smudged handprints all over the inside walls. Human. Some high up, some down low. No footprints. No smears from dragging. Just hands, as if dozens of people had been pressed against the walls, silently pleading to be let out. And here's the kicker. The security seal on the doors hadn't been broken. Not on the highway. Not at the yard. Not at any way station in between. Completely untouched. Ray swore up and down he hadn't opened it. That he wouldn't, even if someone had offered him 10 grand in cash. Said he'd heard whispering from inside the trailer while stopped for fuel near Tornillo. Voices so low and garbled he couldn't make out words, just breath and consonants. Thought it was his radio at first. Thought maybe someone had stowed away and was freezing to death back there. He got out, walked around the back, and that's when he noticed the temperature dot it had dropped. He checked his phone. It read 43 degrees outside. Impossible. This was mid-July in West Texas. At 3 in the morning it should have been close to 80. He felt it. Too sharp, biting cold, like someone had cracked open a walk-in freezer. The asphalt glistened with frost beneath the trailer. His breath misted in the air. The generator wasn't even running. Then came the whispering again. Closer, more insistent. Like someone was pressing their mouth against the sealed door and speaking straight into the metal. Not screaming, not begging. Just talking, like they already knew he'd listen. Ray didn't sleep for 3 days after that. Quit long haul within the month. His Peterbilt still parked behind a diner off I-10, just gathering dust and bird crap. He won't go near it. He moved to Galveston and works at a marina now. Says he only goes out on the water during the day. Says the silence at night reminds him of the loop, of that mile. That part of the loop's easy to miss. Nothing but desert and barbed wire on either side. No off-ramps, no lights. Even the GPS goes buggy for a bit. You'll notice it if you're paying attention. Clock stalls. Temperature reading crashes. Phone glitches out. Some truckers say it's a dead zone. Others swear it's a loop in reality, like you're driving the same mile over and over, your tires wearing a groove into the skin of the earth. A few say they've seen lights blue-white orbs skimming the desert floor, pulsing like they're alive. Sometimes just ahead of the truck, just far enough to draw your eyes off the road. One driver claimed he chased a light for 6 miles before. Realizing he was still at mile marker 46, the locals have their own stories. The Tigua tribe whispers of old spirits bound to the land, wandering souls from long before the border, long before the highway cut across the dust. A few talk about the Nawa, shapeless desert voices that mimic the living, feeding on the minds. of the lonely and lost. They say once you hear them, you're never quite the same. Like something crawled into your head and built a nest. You forget faces. You see things in mirrors. Sometimes you hear someone breathing in the passenger seat, even when you're alone. Last year, a state trooper ran a speed trap along that stretch. He clocked a semi doing 87, pulled it over just past mile 47. Driver's side door swung open. Before he could even get out of his cruiser, the cab was empty. Keys still in the ignition, engine purring like it was on cruise. No sign of a struggle, no blood, no prints. He ran the plate registered to a hauler out of Phoenix. The driver had made a routine call from a truck stop in Deming just 3 hours earlier. Dispatch lost contact 5 minutes after he hit loop 375. They found his wallet, cell phone, and a lunchbox with a half-eaten burrito in the cab. No one's seen him since. The company retired that rig. Driver's family sued the state, but the case never went to trial. Word is they settled quietly, signed NDAs. Never spoke to media again. But there's a mechanic down in Las Cruces who claims he serviced that rig. Swore the sleeper cabin smelled like lake water and rot, like something had been living in there with a driver for miles. Said the insulation in the walls was ripped out from the inside. Said the radio kept playing static even after he pulled the fuse. They towed the truck to a scrapyard in El Paso. It was stolen 2 weeks later. No leads, no suspects. Just gone. Some say the loop's cursed. Others think it's a glitch something. Old and broken, hiding beneath the highway, bleeding through the cracks in time. Whatever it is, it doesn't like to be seen. Doesn't scream or growl or chase. It waits. It suggests. It whispers. And sometimes, if you open the wrong door, it shows you its hands. So if you ever find yourself on loop 375 near El Paso and your GPS freezes and the temperature drops like you just drove into a freezer, don't stop. Don't check the mirrors. Don't listen to the voices. And above all, don't open the trailer. No matter what you hear, because what's inside doesn't. Want out. It wants you in. FM 191 in West Texas wasn't even a dot on most maps. One of those forgotten farm-to-market roads etched into the skin of the desert, winding like a dry vein through nothing but mesquite, yucca, and sand. It ran crookedly between a gas station, outside Pecos, and the bones of an old ranch near the Sierra Vieja foothills, miles of nothingness in between. Haunted only by buzzards and the occasional jackrabbit dumb enough to freeze in your headlights. Folks around Pecos didn't talk much about FM 191 unless you brought it up first. Even then, they just shrug and tell you to avoid it at night, especially if the air got still and the sun dipped behind the rocks just so. They said the land out there had moods, the kind God didn't make. According to a one-eyed mechanic who smelled like diesel and rotgut whiskey. Most figured it was just small-town nonsense, the kind of lore that sprouts in dry places where the radio static stretches on for hours, and the only thing louder than your thoughts is the wind, scratching at your windows. But every now and then, someone new would come through town, an oilfield worker from Odessa, or a long-haul trucker looking for a shortcut to I-10. And they'd take FM 191 like it was just another lonely road in the desert. That's how it got Johnny Harrow. He was hauling a load of industrial pipe from Lubbock to El Paso, 42 years old, 10 years on the road, the kind of guy who'd seen enough weird shit not to scare easy. But after that night, he sold his rig and moved to coastal Oregon. Didn't even give notice. Just vanished from the CB forums, stopped answering calls, even from his sister. She was the one who told people what little she knew, 3 hours missing, scratches on the inside of his windshield, and the look in his eyes when she picked him up from the Pecos emergency room. Like someone who's been buried alive, she said, and then dug up wrong. After that, I started looking into it. I'm not a ghost hunter or anything. I write true crime and paranormal features for magazines. It's a living, barely. Most of it's junk fake seances, cold case write-ups, Bigfoot sightings. But sometimes, there's a thread that sticks. FM 191 was one of those threads. I drove down from Dallas with a thermos of gas station coffee and a notebook full of dead ends. I figured I'd be there a day, maybe two. Record the scenery, talk. To some locals, move on. The first strange thing was the sky. West Texas skies are famously clear, big enough to make you feel like an ant. But near FM 191, there was always this faint haze, like someone had breathed on the horizon. I camped out near the turnoff, parked my rental car under the skeleton of a billboard so sun-bleached you could barely make out the faded lettering, something about land for sale. The only traffic was a border patrol truck that drove past around midnight and an old Silverado that didn't have plates. I waited for the fog. That's what people said happened out of nowhere. Just fog, thick enough to choke headlights and make you feel like the world had collapsed into cotton. No weather report ever showed it, no satellite imagery. But I waited, and around 2:17 a.m., it came. It didn't roll in from any direction. It was just ... there. One moment, I was staring out into the flat expanse of desert, the scrub brush lit, up pale by the moon. The next, I couldn't see past the hood of my car. I stepped out, because of course I did, because I'm a dumb bastard when the story's good enough and the air felt wrong. Wet, yes, but not humid. More like damp with intention, if that makes sense. The kind of moisture that doesn't settle on you, it sinks in. The road felt longer in the fog. My flashlight barely pierced 10 feet ahead, and my own footsteps sounded too far away, like I was hearing them through an old radio. I marked the side of the pavement with chalk every 100 yards just to orient myself. I walked about half, a mile in, and then stopped, mostly because the silence had turned crowded, not with noise. With presence, there was a low sound beneath everything below the wind, below my own heartbeat. It reminded me of a dial-up modem, garbled and fractured, like something trying to speak through wires that had been buried too long. And then came the shape. I wish I could say I saw it clearly, but it was like trying to remember a dream while you're still inside it. It moved across the road ahead of me, tall, bent forward like it carried something heavy, but fast. Not running, just relocating. I didn't move, didn't breathe. And then I saw the lights behind it, flickering like headlights through water. A car, coming slowly. Too slowly. It passed maybe 15 feet from me. An old Crown Vic. Paint scoured off by time, windows rolled up. The driver looked straight ahead, hands at 10 and 2, but his face, it was wrong. Not mutilated, not monstrous. Just off, too smooth. No creases or pores. Almost like someone had stretched a sheet of skin-colored plastic across a skull that wasn't quite human. The passenger seat was empty, but the back seat, Jesus, there were eyes, pressed up against the glass, wide, wet, staring. I turned back toward my car, but the fog had shifted. I couldn't see the chalk marks anymore. Couldn't hear my own steps. My flashlight began to dim, not flicker. Dim, like the power was being drained by something nearby. I ran like hell, even though the air fought me with every breath and the ground felt soft, like I was running across a soaked mattress. I don't remember getting back. Not really. One moment I was stumbling in a panic, screaming into the void. And the next I was behind the wheel with the engine running and the fog thinning like morning breath. My phone said 5:41 a.m. I had left the car around 2:17. That's 3 hours and 24 minutes. The voice recorder in my jacket had captured exactly 8 minutes of static. I should have left then, I know that. But I'm not like Johnny. Harrow, I don't quit easy. And something about FM 191 got under my skin. Over the next 2 days, I tracked down a retired sheriff's deputy named Cal Meeks. He used to run patrols out that way back in the 70s, when oil rigs were still trying to bleed the land dry. Cal lived in a trailer behind a pawn shop and smelled like arthritis cream, but he told me something I can't forget. 1974, he said. They found a car on the side of FM 191. Engine cold, doors locked from the inside. Whole family in there, mother, father, 2 boys. All dead, not from violence. No wounds, no signs of struggle. Just ... and inside. Like someone switched off their souls. When they opened the car, the windshield was covered in writing. Scratches. From the inside, Cal said he saw it before they took the vehicle away. He was a rookie then. He told me the scratches formed symbols. Nothing he recognized, not letters, not any language. Just marks that made your eyes hurt if you looked too long. They said it was carbon monoxide, he muttered. But that ain't. How poison makes you look. These folks were grinning. He wouldn't say more. Just stared past me like he was trying not to remember something pressing up against the inside of his skull. I left Pecos that evening around dusk. I didn't take FM 191, and I don't think I ever will again. But sometimes, when I'm driving a lonely stretch of highway, I think I see a smear of fog on the horizon. Just a taste. Like the desert remembering something it shouldn't. And sometimes I dream of that car. The one with the wrong-faced driver and the eyes in the back seat. I wonder if I was supposed to get in, and I wonder what would have been waiting if I had. Highway 90 outside of Uvalde runs like a sun-baked scar across the Texas scrubland, stretching long and straight between the dying mesquites and yellow grass. It's one of those roads where time slows down and thoughts get heavy, like the heat, pressing on the roof of your car. You see more buzzards than people out there. Nothing but land, sky, and the occasional whine of a semi pushing 80 down the long straightaway. But ask the right folks, especially the ones who drive at night, and you'll hear stories about a stretch of road just east of Uvalde near the old Pecan Grove that they won't forget no matter how many miles they've put between themselves. And that place, there's a roadside shrine half buried in the weeds along the south shoulder. Just a few weather-worn crosses, sun-bleached plastic flowers, and a little statue of the Virgin Mary with her face melted smooth by the sun. Most people pass it without noticing, blending into the endless repetition of barbed wire fences and dry creek beds. But the truckers, especially the night haulers running west to Del Rio or east toward San Antonio, they know. Not all of them talk about it, but enough do. Word spreads at truck stops over burnt coffee and smokes, how some of them hear kids laughing in their cabs late at night, soft and close like the children are hiding somewhere just behind the seat. Others say they've seen handprints. Not just on the cab windows, but inside the trailers. Small prints. Greasy, faint, like a child's hands pressed into cold metal. The story goes back to the summer of '77. 3 kids, local ones, wandered out of their trailer park on the edge of Uvalde one July afternoon. It was one of those blistering days where the pavement shimmered and cicadas screamed so loud it felt like your skull would split. The oldest was 11. They were headed for the Pecan Grove. There used to be a swing someone had tied from one of the big limbs, and the kids would go out there to cool off under the shade. But they never came back. A search party found their bikes in the ditch near the shrine. 2 Schwinn's and a banana seed Huffy laid out like they'd just fallen over. The grass was matted down like they'd been sitting there. No sign of struggle. Just gone. They combed the grove, brought in dogs and helicopters, but nothing turned up. Not a scrap of clothing, no footprints. Some folks whispered about coyotes or a drifter, but there were no signs. Just a stillness in the air after that, and something colder. People started avoiding that part of the highway. Even in broad daylight, the pecan trees cast a kind of darkness that seemed deeper than shade should be. Then, not long after the search was called off, strange things started happening to the drivers who passed that way after dark. Raymond Coulter, a long-haul trucker from Odessa, was one of the first to speak up. He told the dispatcher he was heading westbound around 2 in the morning, hauling sheet metal. About 5 miles past the shrine, he started hearing giggling in his sleeper cab. At first, he figured he was just overtired, but then he felt the tug like someone small had crawled onto the bunk and was pulling at his jeans. He swerved, damn near went into the ditch. Pulled over, checked the cab. Nothing there. But when he opened the back trailer, he found smudged handprints on the inside of the doors. 3 of them. About the size of a 5-year-old's. He quit trucking not long after that. Since then, it's been a kind of quiet legend. Not the kind that makes headlines, but the sort that lives in low voices and passing glances. You won't find it on any map, and the shrine's never been updated. You get the feeling that folks want to forget it, like the town collectively decided to look the other way. But every now and then, something new happens, and the story surfaces again. Last year, a driver named Jesse Ruiz took the overnight haul from Houston to Del Rio. He wasn't superstitious, didn't care much for ghost stories, but around 1:30 a.m., right as he came up on the pecan grove, the temperature in his cab dropped so suddenly that his breath fogged up the windshield. The AC wasn't even on. He said he heard whispering just behind his ear like someone telling a secret, but couldn't quite make out the words. He checked the mirror and saw movement in the sleeper. Thought maybe he'd picked up a hitchhiker. Without realizing it, though he knew that made no sense. He pulled over, checked the cab, trailer, nothing. But when he got to the warehouse in Del Rio and opened up the trailer to unload, the dock manager asked him if he'd been hauling livestock. Jesse didn't understand. The man pointed at the inside of the trailer. Dozens of little handprints. Some of them smeared like the kids had been running their hands along the walls, playing tag. That night haunted Jesse. He didn't sleep for days, said he kept waking up to the sound of giggling in his apartment. His girlfriend left him a month. Later said he'd gone strange, staring at walls, jumping at nothing. He hung himself in his garage 6 weeks after the haul. There's talk now that it's not just the grove, that something inside the shrine itself, buried or hidden, never moved on. Maybe it latched onto the road, using the trucks as vessels. A kind of ride-along haunting, picking up momentum with each pass. Some of the locals believe the kids never left, that they're still there, hiding in the trees, trying to get home. Only they're different now, twisted by years of being lost, by the loneliness and confusion of being forgotten. The laughter people hear, it's not playful. It's hollow, stretched too thin. Like they're pretending to be children or remembering what it was like, but not quite getting it right. There was a woman, Lucinda Devers, used to live in Uvalde, ran a small diner off the highway. She was a teenager when the kids disappeared. Said she'd known one of them, a little girl named Amber who used to sit at the counter and drink chocolate milk after school. Lucinda never forgot her face. One night a few years back, Lucinda was driving home late after closing up, took the long way past the grove. Said she saw something in the road, 3 figures, small and still, just standing there in the middle of the lane. She slammed the brakes, skidded, heart pounding. When she looked up, they were gone. But her headlights illuminated the shrine. Just off the shoulder, and for the first time in decades, she saw fresh flowers on it. Real ones, damp from dew. Lucinda wouldn't talk about what happened after that, not in detail. Just that she moved away not long after, sold the diner, left. No forwarding address. People say she doesn't answer letters, doesn't talk on the phone. The state won't do anything about it. Caltrans won't even acknowledge the shrine. Too small, they say unofficial. Probably just an old family memorial. But if you're driving that way at night and you see the shrine flicker in your headlights, don't look too long. Don't stop. And if you hear something behind you, soft like a giggle or a whisper in the dark, don't answer. Just keep driving. Keep your eyes on the road, and whatever you do, don't open the trailer doors until you're far away. Real far. Because once they find a way in, they don't like to let go. FM 285 wasn't the kind of road you took unless you had to. It looped west off the I-35, ran parallel to the Rio Grande for a stretch, and curled back toward Laredo like a bent finger. Long-haul truckers sometimes used it to dodge way stations or shave time on midnight runs, but locals knew better. The pavement was worn to hell, lined with bleached-out mesquite trees and prickly pear that looked fossilized in the heat. No lights, no cell reception past mile 7, and no reason to be out there unless you were carrying something you didn't want to explain. They said smugglers used it in the 70s and 80s, back when things were looser, back when the cartel didn't have as much pull this far north. Stashes of weapons, drugs, sometimes people. The desert swallowed a lot of noise. Cops avoided it after dark, and you didn't see many border agents unless something already went wrong. Hell, my uncle used to tell me about driving that road. Once in '79, saw a man waving a pistol at a broken-down El Camino, no lights anywhere, and he didn't stop. Just floored it past mile marker 14 and never looked back. When I was a kid, I thought it was just a scare story to keep me from wandering too far off during deer season. But in the last few years, the road started showing up on Facebook groups and trucker forums. Late-night CB chatter, that kind of thing. People were talking about a woman. Always the same one white dress, hair down, barefoot. Seen most often near mile 14. Sometimes just standing at the shoulder. Sometimes already in the middle of the road. Never looking at you, just waiting. A few drivers said they stopped just to check if she was hurt or high or needed a phone. That's how the story goes. She asks for a ride. Quiet voice, like someone talking from the bottom of a well. If you say yes, she gets in. Doesn't say a word after that. Sits in the passenger seat, hands in her lap, and stares ahead like she's been driving that road longer than anyone. Most drivers said they passed her up. Who picks up hitchhikers anymore, especially on a backwater road like that? But there's always one. The guy's name was Danny Cortez. I remember it because I was still working the night desk at the Laredo Sun-Times when it happened, and we ran a piece on him. Local guy, mid-30s, drove for a fuel delivery company out of San Antonio. Came down twice a week to refill tanks at mom-and-pop stations all through Webb and Zapata counties. Not a big talker, according to his coworkers. Had a girlfriend in Austin. Some kid he barely saw. Liked driving the late shift. Less traffic, more sky. Anyway, it was September, brutally hot, moonless night. Danny was coming down 285 after a drop in Bruni, headed west to hit a 24-hour shell on the edge of town. He'd done the run a dozen times, and for whatever reason, maybe to save time or maybe just because he liked the emptiness, he decided to take the loop past mile 14, and sure enough, there she was. Security cam footage from his dash shows her. Appear in the headlights. Thin, pale, maybe late 20s. White dress down to her ankles, no shoes. She's standing just off the shoulder, arms at her sides, not moving as his truck slows to a crawl. The dash cam catches him saying something, can't hear it. No audio, but you see her head turned toward him. Then the cab light goes on. He opens the door dot and she climbs in. From there, it gets weird. Real weird. the Shell station cameras catch. His rig pulling in around 2:08 a.m. You see the truck nose into the lot, swing around, then back into a diesel pump. The headlights go off, the engine idles a while, 5 minutes, maybe more. Then the door opens. Only. No one gets out. Security footage shows the door hang open for a full 20 seconds. Then it slams shut, and the truck just sits there. Lights off. Engine dead. Cops showed up around 3 o'clock after the clerk got spooked and called it in. Danny's rig was still there, locked, engine cold, no signs of struggle. No blood, no broken glass, no prints except his. But Danny Cortez? Gone, vanished. They checked the trailer, the undercarriage, even the tanks, nothing. The truck was towed and impounded. The last anyone saw of him was that security cam footage, him pulling in, opening the passenger door. And then nothing. No woman, no Danny. And here's the kicker, the footage is clean. Too clean. Frame by frame, you can watch the truck arrive, the door swing open, but there's no sign anyone was sitting next to him. No shifting silhouette, no shadows. Even though the dash cam shows her getting in, and people swear he picked her up, the Shell station tapes tell a different story. Like she was never there to begin with. Naturally, people started whispering. It wasn't just a ghost story anymore. Truckers stopped taking FM 285 altogether. Locals said the road was cursed, that something died out there during the bad days, something that wasn't done with us. One old-timer I talked to said he remembered a girl from Laredo who went missing back in '83. Blanca something. Pretty, worked at a diner. Got mixed up with a mule who ran product through the desert. Her body was never found, but her dress was white, blood-stained, tangled in a barbed wire fence off mile marker 14. Of course, you start digging and the names get fuzzy. Blanca becomes Marisol, becomes Ana Lucia, depending on who's telling it. But the road stays the same. FM 285, and the woman in white never changes. I made the mistake of driving it once. This was a year after Danny disappeared. I'd been chasing the story, trying to piece it together. Thought maybe it was some elaborate urban legend, something viral. I figured I'd drive the loop myself, just to see. I left around midnight, took a rented Ford with a fresh dash cam. Kept a voice recorder running the whole time. The road was worse than I remembered. Cracked asphalt, yellow lines all but gone. The mesquite trees looked like twisted hands reaching out. I passed mile 12, then 13. At mile 14, I slowed down. Was nothing at first. Just heat waves and dust. I kept creeping forward. The desert went silent, no crickets, no wind. And then I saw her standing on the right shoulder, right where the pavement faded into sand. White dress, hair down past her chest. Pale as bone. In the headlights, she didn't look at me. I stopped. My hand went to the door without thinking, and I swear to God, it felt like something was pulling me forward. Like gravity itself wanted me to let her in. I was halfway through opening the door when I caught her eyes. They weren't looking at me. They were staring past me into the cab, like she already saw where she was going. That's when I saw her mouth move. No sound came out, but I saw the words, "Not yet." I slammed the door shut, threw the car in reverse, and burned rubber all the way back to I-35. Didn't stop until I hit a lit gas station near Encinal. My voice recorder had glitched halfway through. Dashcam was fried, just static after mile. Marker 13. I don't drive that road anymore. Nobody does if they can help it, but people still see her. Truckers talk in hushed tones on CBs, swearing she's still out there, still waiting. Some say she doesn't always ask now. Sometimes, if you slow down too much, she just opens the door and gets in. And if she does, you better not look at her. You better keep driving until she wants out. If you stop, if you turn to face her, You might end up like Danny Cortez, parked at a gas station, driver's door swinging in the wind, empty cab, waiting for someone else to take the loop. The wind always howls here, always. Doesn't matter if it's July or January, noon or midnight, the wind just never stops. It scrapes over the dry plains like a dull blade on bone, whispering through the mesquite and dancing across the blacktop. Like something alive. Highway 87 near Sterling City ain't long, not by Texas standards. Just a jagged stretch of road cutting westward through Mitchell County, connecting a scattering of ranches, dying towns, and heat-baked solitude. Most folks drive it with a lead foot and both eyes forward, never stopping unless they've got no choice. Truckers especially pass through without dawdling. They talk, though. They always talk. The story of Donnie Big Rig Price has been bouncing around CB radio since 2003. According to the legend, he was hauling hay from Abilene to El Paso and got caught up on 87 around midnight. He radioed out over Channel 19, laughing into the mic, saying something like, "I hear this stretch of road's haunted. That true? Someone say my name. I dare ya." Witnesses say the laughter stopped mid-transmission. His rig was found the next afternoon in Presidio, parked like someone had just stepped out to stretch their legs. Engine off, headlights on, cab door hanging open. But no Donnie. His boots, just the boots, were sitting neatly beside the gas pedal. No blood, no struggle, just gone. That story gets told 100 different ways depending on who's talking. Some say he got pulled into the wind. Others say a woman's voice lured him out. One guy, a veteran hauler named Hank from Temple, swore he passed Donnie's rig that night empty on the road, crawling along like someone was still at the wheel. But no driver. I didn't believe it, of course. Not back then. I was born in San Angelo, raised on stories like that. Texas has more ghost stories than jackrabbits. My dad used to tell me about phantom hitchhikers near Sweetwater and blood cults outside Brady, all campfire fodder. But I came to believe something was wrong with Highway 87 the night. I drove it myself. It was October 18th, 2021. I remember the date because it was the day after my mom died. Heart attack. She lived alone in Big Spring, and I was making the drive from Austin to collect her things. I'd meant to take I-20, but a crash near Midland rerouted me south. GPS led me through Sterling City, straight down 87. Even in daylight, the road felt wrong. It wasn't just the emptiness that's expected out there. It was the tone of the emptiness. The land felt hollow. You ever stand in a big empty warehouse and just feel how all the sound is sucked out of the air? It was like that. Flat fields stretched out on either side, yellowed and dead. No cattle, no windmills turning, no insects. And the sky, Jesus, that sky looked like a stretched out bruise, all gray and brown, like it had been dead too long. I cracked my window around Sterling City just to shake off the feeling. The wind rushed in sharp and cold, far too cold for October in Texas. It whistled and hissed, and then, God help me, I heard it, a whisper, just under the roar of the wind. My name, not shouted, not spoken, whispered like someone was riding shotgun and leaned close to my ear. I jerked the wheel so hard I nearly ran off the road. Slammed the window up, heart pounding, sweat suddenly pouring down my face. I didn't stop driving, just gripped the wheel tighter and kept going, telling myself I imagined it. Maybe I wanted to hear it after all the stories. But then it happened again. 10 miles later, past a faded sign that read, County Maintenance Ends. The wind picked up into a full-blown howl. And there it was again, my name, clearer this time. The same voice I'd heard all my life but couldn't place. It was familiar. It sounded like Mom. I pulled over. I don't know why I did it. Maybe it was grief. Maybe it was some dumb part of my brain clinging to the idea that I wasn't hallucinating. But I killed the engine and stepped out. The wind hit me like a wall. My eyes watered instantly, and the air tasted like dust and copper. The kind of smell you get in an old barn full of rusted nails and dead rats. And I heard her, Mom, clear as day, calling my name. I walked around the car, slow at first, then faster. My boots crunched over dry gravel as I staggered into the ditch, scanning the field. Nothing but knee-high grass and twisted barbed wire fences. And then something moved. Far out in the field, maybe 100 yards away, I saw a figure, not walking, standing, still, long dress. Barefoot the wind bent the grass sideways, but her hair didn't move. It just hung down over her face like black cords. I stepped forward, squinting. Something about her wasn't right. Her arms were too long, dangling down past her knees, and she was tall. Real tall. Taller than any woman I'd ever seen. I don't know what possessed me, but I called out, "Mom?" She raised her head. I didn't see a face, just teeth. A mouth far too wide, stretching from cheek to cheek, packed with yellowed, narrow teeth like corn kernels. And she smiled. I ran. Back in the car, I slammed the door and peeled off tires spitting gravel. The wind screamed louder, like it was chasing me. I drove with white knuckles, speeding through the barren landscape, not looking in the mirrors. I didn't want to know if she was behind me. It took 20 minutes before I could see another vehicle, an old pickup heading north. I slowed down just enough to see the driver give me a look, one of those looks you only get from people who've seen the same thing. He nodded once, solemn, then kept going. That's when I knew I wasn't the first. I got to Big Spring after dark and stayed there a week. I didn't drive back through Sterling City. I took the long way home, but that wasn't the end. A month later, I got a call from the Texas Department of Transportation. They'd found my mom's necklace, an old silver cross she wore every day hanging on a mile marker out on 87. The weird thing? It wasn't the route I took. It was a section of road 30 miles south of where I'd stopped. I hadn't been anywhere near it. I didn't go retrieve it. Told them to throw it away. But they didn't. A week after that, I got a package in the mail. No return address. Inside was the necklace, wrapped in burlap. No dot since then. I've had dreams, always the same. I'm driving down 87, wind howling. I hear her whispering my name. I pull over, and she's there, standing in the field, smiling. Sometimes I wake up with grass clippings in my bed. Once I found a single rusted nail under my pillow. I don't drive at night anymore. I don't take highways if I can help it. And if I ever see a sign for Sterling City, I turn around. But sometimes, late at night when the wind kicks up just right, I swear I still hear her, whispering, waiting, and I wonder if I'm already heading back. If part of me never left that road. If part of me belongs to it now. FM 1069 ran crooked through the salt-flat edge of Aransas Pass, a 2-lane stretch of asphalt barely elevated above the lapping fingers of the bay. Most days it was quiet, the kind of road only locals used, and even they avoided it after dark. It wasn't officially haunted. No tragic bus accidents, no forgotten cemeteries under the pavement. But there was something about it. Something old. Older than the road, older than the towns, older than the language people used to talk about fear. In 1998, when Randy Buckner was still driving long-haul routes for a seafood distributor out of Corpus, he took FM 1069 most nights on his loop toward Rockport. It shaved off 10 minutes, and time was money. He never said much about it, not even to his wife, until he came home one night pale and shaking and never drove that stretch again. He quit trucking 3 months later, bought a used lawnmower, and started doing odd jobs around town. People thought it was a heart thing or maybe booze. But I was there when he came into the bait shop the next morning, sun just rising, eyes still wild from whatever he'd seen. He didn't talk to the other guys, just looked at me and said, "Don't drive 1069 after midnight, especially if the water's still." I didn't, for years. But I never forgot the way he said it. Now, I'd like to tell you I was just passing through some drifter with nothing to lose. But I've lived in Ingleside my whole damn life. Grew up fishing the bays, knew every pothole in that road before I was 16. When my mom got sick, I moved back in to help. And when she passed, I stayed. Got a job at the plant outside town, working night shifts. That was the first time I had to drive FM 1069 in the dark. I told myself it was just a road. Blacktop and grit and old stories. What could it really do to me? The first night, nothing happened. Second night, same. But on the third, I noticed my mirrors fogging over. Not from the inside, no breath on the glass, no heater running. It was the outside. Like condensation on a beer bottle, even though the air was dry. I pulled over, wiped them down, and kept driving. A mile later, I saw something standing on the shoulder. It was tall. Too tall. I thought maybe it was a signpost at first, but it moved. It turned toward my truck as I passed, slow and casual, like it had been expecting me. The thing was thin, not starved, but off, lanky, bones in the wrong places. And its legs, Jesus, they bent backward at the knees like a deer's, but more exaggerated, more inconceivable. It was wet, dripping like it had just climbed out of the bay. I didn't stop. I didn't slow down. I felt my hands grip the wheel until my knuckles popped. The thing lifted an arm, long, narrow, fingered, and waved. Not frantic. Not threatening. Just acknowledging. Like it knew me. I didn't look back. The next morning I called in sick, even though I needed the hours. Spent the day walking the shoreline, trying to talk myself down. Maybe it was a trick of the headlights. Maybe I'd fallen asleep at the wheel, dreamt it. But in the back of my mind, I knew better. Something was wrong out there. And the thing is, I wasn't the only one. You start asking around, carefully, mind you, and people start saying things. Most won't come right out and tell you, but you pick it up in the pauses. Guys at the docks who mutter about fog even on clear nights. Old-timers who won't take 1069 no matter how bad traffic gets. And one woman, Marie Sandoval, who said, her brother disappeared on that road in 2013. Left the plant after a double shift, never made it home. His truck was found on the shoulder, door open, key still in the ignition. No signs of struggle. No footprints leading away. Nothing. Except salt water in the floorboards. I started driving the long way around. Took me 20 extra minutes to get to work, but I slept easier. Then, about a month later, I heard something strange on the scanner. It was a trucker's call, breaking up with static. The dispatcher kept asking him to repeat. All you could make out was something in the water. It's standing up now. Oh God, it's waving. Then silence. They found the rig the next morning. Empty. Engine running. A trail of salt water leading down into the marsh. After that, people started talking for real. Quietly, sure, but the stories came out. Some said it was an old coastal spirit, something that had lived in the bay before people came. Others said it was a government experiment gone wrong. Chemicals dumped into the water back in the 70s, mutating something that should have died. I didn't know what to believe, but I started collecting the reports. They all had the same elements. The road at night, fogged mirrors, a tall, Thin figure dripping wet and always that goddamn wave. And always the same unspoken message. Don't. Look back. It's worse if you do. I broke that rule once. Just once. It was a Sunday night. I was heading back from Rockport late, forgot myself and took the shortcut. About halfway down FM 1069, the radio started acting up, not just static, but voices, half whispers, in a language I didn't recognize. Then the fog rolled in, but only around my truck, like it was following me, wrapping around the cab. I saw a movement in the rearview mirror. Something stepped out of the water. I should have kept driving, but I didn't. I looked back. For a second, just a second, I saw its face, or what should have been a face. It was long, stretched, like skin pulled tight over something wrong. The eyes were just holes, deep and glistening. And its mouth. I don't know if it was smiling or screaming. My nose started bleeding. The glass in the rear view cracked, even though nothing touched it. I hit the gas and didn't stop until I was home. Sat on the floor in the dark until the sun came up. Now, I won't drive at night at all. Not anywhere near the coast, but some nights, especially when the tide's high and the wind's still, I swear I can hear something tapping at my windows. Not knocking, tapping, rhythmic, patient, like it's still out there, like it remembers I looked back. They say Route 35 just outside Palacios, Texas, doesn't get much traffic after dark anymore. Used to be a main artery for shrimp trucks and fishermen's beat-up Fords heading inland with coolers full of the Gulf. These days, locals take the long way through Port Lavaca or up the 87, especially if the sun's gone down. People don't talk about it too much. Not in town anyway. But if you catch someone at the Driftwood Bar, after 2 beers 3 if they're the quiet type, and you mention the road by name, you'll see it. That pause. Like their brain hit a rock in the stream, and then maybe they'll tell you. Light. A sound. Something that didn't fit. I wouldn't have believed any of it if it hadn't happened to me. I grew up in Victoria and drove trucks most of my adult life, hauling HVAC parts and steel rebar from San Antonio down to Corpus. Sometimes Houston if the pay was right. Route 35 was always my shortcut. It shaved off 20 minutes and kept me out of the endless freeway soup north of Bay City. I'd driven that stretch 100 times, mostly at night. Never had an issue. Until last March. I'd been running a late delivery, hauling a full load of copper piping bound for a contractor in Rockport. Wasn't supposed to be late, but the dispatcher screwed up the paperwork and had me sitting at the yard for 6 hours before I could roll out. So by the time I was passing through Palacios, it was just past 1:30 in the morning. Moonless sky, thick clouds overhead. The kind of night where your headlights seem to eat more darkness than they push away. I'd just cleared the edge of town and was coasting along the stretch near Oyster Lake when I noticed it. Another set of headlights in the mirror. Not close, maybe a quarter-mile back, but definitely there. A twin glow riding low like an old car or maybe a pickup. I didn't think much of it. Figured another late hauler like me. But 10 minutes went by and the lights never got closer. Never shrank either. Always the same distance, like we were tied together on a string, then came the hum. Subtle at first, like the vibration of a distant engine bleeding through the cab. My truck has its own rhythm, you get to know every rattle. And squeak after enough years behind the wheel. But this was new, a low thrumming like an idling diesel. Except I couldn't feel it. Not through the pedals, not in my spine. It was just in the air. I turned the radio down to listen, and that's when I realized something else was off. I hadn't seen another vehicle in 20 miles, not since I passed that closed gas station near Collegport. And yet, there it was again, those same damn headlights, still hugging the bend behind me like a shadow that didn't know how to fade. I reached for the CB, keyed it up. Breaker 19, anybody rolling south on 35 near Palacios? Static. Come back, anybody else see that? Tail behind me? Still nothing. Not even a hiss. Like the signal just vanished into cotton. I flicked the high beams back, then forward again. No change. The lights behind me didn't react. Didn't blink or flare or dim like real headlights do when they crest a bump or dip behind a hill. They just floated. Constant. Wrong. That's when the music started. I thought it was my radio at first, some kind of interference. It was faint, like someone had left a tiny speaker in the dash and cranked it low. Tinny notes, like a warped cassette. On rewind. I reached for the dial and turned it off completely. Didn't stop the music. It wasn't even a real song. Just an eerie warble, notes bending in ways that didn't make sense. Like an old Tejano record melting in the sun. Somewhere in the chaos, I picked out a melody. A woman's voice, thin and mournful. She wasn't singing exactly, more like chanting. Repeating something. My Spanish isn't great, but I recognized center and bird name. I should have pulled over right then. Should have turned around and hightailed it back to Palacios and found a goddamn motel. But I didn't. Pride or stupidity, I kept going. At around mile marker 239, the road narrows between two stretches of salt marsh. No shoulder, just swamp grass and black water that smells like rot when the wind's wrong. That's where I finally saw it. The truck or whatever had been trailing me vanished. One moment the lights were there, next they blinked out like a candle snuffed by breath. I slammed on the brakes. Silence. No engine hum. No warbled music. Just my own heart thudding like a drum in my chest. I threw the truck in park and climbed down, flashlight in hand. Told myself maybe the guy took a turnoff. I missed. Maybe his lights failed. Maybe hell, I don't know what I thought. But I walked the length of my rig and looked back down the highway. Nothing. No wind. No insects. Just the oppressive weight of swamp night pressing in. Then the static came. Not from the CB, not from the radio. From everywhere. Like the air itself was crackling. I felt it in my teeth like a mouthful of aluminum foil. And underneath that static, the prayer came back. Only this time it was backward. I don't know how to explain that. I knew it was Spanish. I could feel the rhythm, hear the vowels. But it was wrong. Twisted. Like someone playing a confession tape in reverse. And it was coming from the marsh. I turned the flashlight toward the reeds, swept the beam slowly. Movement. At first I thought it was a bird, some heron lifting out of the shallows. But then it moved again, quick, deliberate. A shape low to the ground, maybe 3 feet tall, crawling through the wet grass toward the road. It had too many joints. Arms that bent in places they shouldn't. Legs that folded backward like a fawn born wrong. And the worst part? It was wearing clothes, not rags, not animal skin. Jeans. A flannel shirt. One of those blue ones with pearlescent buttons like my grandfather used to wear. And its face, no, I didn't see its face. I won't say that, because I think if I had, I wouldn't be here. I ran. Not back into the cab, but down the highway. My boots slapped pavement as I shouted like a lunatic, hoping someone, anyone, would come around the bend. My flashlight beam bounced wildly, and somewhere behind me, I heard it dragging. A wet scrape like soggy denim on asphalt. I don't remember how far I ran. Eventually, I found myself back at the truck. Doors closed. Engine still running. But the music back again. Louder now. And in it, layered between notes, I heard a second voice. A child. Crying. That broke me. I climbed back in, floored it, and didn't stop until I hit a Whataburger in Rockport. The cashier said I looked like I'd seen a ghost. I told him I didn't see anything. Not really, but here's the thing. The next morning, I went to check the back of the trailer just to be sure nothing had shifted or come loose. And on the metal ramp, clear as daylight, were footprints. Small ones. Bare. Soaked through. Like they just walked out of the marsh and stood there watching. I haven't driven Route 35 since. I won't. I take the long way now, even if it costs me time, money, fuel. Because I've heard the stories. More of them now. A farmer in Matagorda saw a woman walking the roadside at 2 a.m., but when he stopped to help, there was no one there. A kid from Blessing swears he saw his dead brother's face in the rear view. And the trucker, the one who heard the prayer and static, he quit driving. Lives out near El Campo now. Won't leave the house after dark. The others can say it's swamp gas or heat lightning or overworked brains. But I know better. Something lives on that stretch near Palacios. Something old, something hungry. And when the fog rolls in low over the reeds, it crawls up out of the dark to follow. Always just. Behind you. Waiting. Highway 16 cuts through Bandera County like an old scar, long, cracked, and fading around the edges, but still pulsing with life just enough to remind you it's there. Out that way, west of San Antonio, the land changes. The scrubland gives way to limestone hills and twisted mesquite trees, the kind that lean like they've been listening to secrets in the wind for centuries. It's beautiful shore in a way that's dry and mean and holds its beauty close. But if you talk to the old-timers, they'll tell you there's a stretch just a few miles long that don't play by the same rules as the rest of the state. Truckers call it the shift. Nobody knows exactly when the stories started, but they've been passed around CB radios and gas station counters for as long as anyone can remember. Starts around mile marker 214, ends just past 217. The boundaries are soft like smoke or a half-remembered dream. Somewhere in there, things stop working right. Radios cut out. Compasses spin. Engines hiccup and lose power even when there's no mechanical reason. And mirrors, it's always the mirrors. That's the part they agree on most folks. Just get a cold feeling or a brief static hiss in their ears like a TV without a signal. But some, the ones who stay too long or drive too slow, they see things, glimpses, faces that don't belong, shapes on the road that vanish when headlights touch them. And sometimes, if they look in the mirror at the wrong time, they see something that shouldn't be there. A driver exactly like them, but not. Same face, same hat, same clothes. Only wrong somehow. Eyes too wide. Smiling when they're not. Jared Bell was a long-haul driver, 43 years old, with over 2 million miles under his belt and a reputation for keeping his logbooks clean. He didn't believe in ghost stories. Said he believed in potholes, brake checks, and the stupidity of four-wheelers cutting off 18-wheelers. He'd driven Highway 16 plenty of times, never thought much of the shift. Just trucker BS, something to keep the CB chatter going on long nights. That changed the last week of October, the year the drought hit hardest. The land had cracked. Open by then, and fires had swept through Bandera in July, leaving blackened stretches along the roadside like old bruises. Jared had picked up a load of feed in Kerrville, heading south to Divine. He left late in the day, hoping to hit the Bandera stretch just before dark. Said he liked driving at dusk, fewer cars, less sun in his eyes. He remembered hearing that radio static kick in around 6:47 p.m. because he was listening to a preacher out of San Angelo ranting about sin and damnation, and the voice just fizzled out mid-sentence. No pop, no fade, just gone. Jared reached for the dial but couldn't pick up anything, not even the emergency channels. CB went quiet too, which was strange. Usually someone's always yammering. Then the engine stuttered. Just once, like it skipped a beat. RPMs dropped, lights dimmed, then everything came back. He chalked it up to bad gas or maybe dust in the lines, nothing worth pulling over for. But it was when he checked his mirrors that his stomach turned. In the side mirror, the one mounted high above the driver's door, he saw the shape of his own rig trailing behind him. Same make, same faded red paint. But the driver inside, him, had both hands tight on the wheel, face forward, and a wide, unnatural grin stretching across his face. He wasn't smiling. He blinked, and it was gone. Just road behind him, dipping into the valley and rising again toward the next hill. Jared didn't stop. He didn't even slow down. But his hands began to sweat, and he found himself breathing too fast. He kept checking the mirror, expecting to see the grinning double again. Nothing. Just the long Texas twilight settling in, blue light bleeding over the landscape like a bruise. The next few miles passed in a haze. Trees seemed taller than before. Shadows stretched farther. He started noticing signs that weren't familiar, not highway signs, but hand-painted boards nailed to trees or stuck in the ground. Messages like turn back and nitrogen monoxide going back scrawled in white paint, tilted like they'd been hurriedly posted. He'd never seen them before. He drove this stretch at least once a month. At mile 216, the headlights dimmed again. The road ahead. Warped, not visibly, but in his gut. Like the world shifted 1 inch to the left and took his sense of balance with it. He gripped the wheel tighter, knuckles white, and muttered to himself, just bad road, maybe a heat shimmer, maybe the stress of too many nights with too little sleep. Then the dashboard lights blinked and came back. Except they were wrong. The odometer showed the correct mileage, but the date on the small clock display had changed. October 17, 1997, 26 years ago. He hadn't even been driving then. Jared laughed nervously, smacked the dash with his palm. But the display didn't change. He passed an old gas station next, one he swore hadn't been there earlier. Broken glass windows, rusted pumps, the kind of place that died decades ago. Only the lights inside were on, faint and flickering, and for a second he thought he saw movement in the doorway. A man, maybe, or something shaped like one, arms too long, shoulders bent, head tilted at a sharp, unnatural angle, watching, not moving. Then he saw another truck pulled off to the shoulder up ahead. Same color, same trailer, identical, and the driver standing beside it was him. Again, same jacket, same ball cap. But this version of him stood perfectly still, arms at his sides, eyes locked onto Jared's cab as he approached. No expression. Just watching as he passed, the double lifted one hand slowly and pointed up, not toward the sky, but toward the mirror. Jared didn't look. He stared ahead, jaw clenched, blood rushing in his ears. Then the lights flickered once more, and the radio crackled to life with the end of the preacher's sentence, picking up like it had never been interrupted. The CB chirped. His compass settled north. And just like that, he was past it. Mile 218. Everything normal. He didn't tell anyone right away. Spent the night in Divine, sleeping with all the cab lights on, sweat soaking his sheets. For weeks after, he kept checking his mirrors, expecting to see that smile, those eyes. But the thing that got him, the thing that kept him up nights, wasn't. What he saw, it was what changed, because when he called his sister a few days later, just to hear a familiar voice, she was confused. Said she hadn't heard from him in years. Said he vanished the fall of 1997, never showed up to Thanksgiving. Never called, never wrote. They buried an empty casket in 2002. Said his name is on a memorial stone in the cemetery. Outside of Kerrville. He drove out there a week later, just to prove her wrong. But there it was. Jared Lane Bell, 1963 to 1997. A photo etched in the marble. Same face, same hat. He touched it. Cold. Real. Now he doesn't drive nights anymore. Won't take Highway 16 unless there's no other way. Says if you see your reflection where it doesn't belong, don't wave, don't speak, don't even look, just drive. Because some roads in Texas don't take you through. They take you somewhere else. US 180 runs long and flat through the Texas scrubland, a place where the land forgets itself and the sky hovers too low for comfort. Just west of Mineral Wells, where the mesquite trees thin out and the road curves like a bent finger, the air gets still in a way that makes truckers shift in their seats and ease off the gas. They don't say much about it on the radio, and they won't put it in writing. But ask around any roadside bar in Palo Pinto County and you'll get the same kind of look. Like someone chewing on a memory with nails in it. Most of the locals don't like to talk about the stretch of highway between mile markers 281 and 286, not because of what they know, but because of what they don't. The silence in that 5-mile corridor doesn't feel natural. It's thick, humming, like it's holding something inside. Back in 2003, before word spread wide, a man named Daniel Hurst ran freight through that corridor 3 nights a week. Long haul from El Paso to Dallas, didn't think twice about detours. He was the kind of guy who laughed through brake checks and could steer an 18-wheeler one-handed in a rainstorm. His last full run eastbound was in September that year. He came back changed, if you could even say he came back at all. Hurst had pulled into a gas station outside Breckenridge, shaking, pupils blown wide, shirt damp with sweat like he'd run through a fever. The station clerk said his right hand was wrapped in a sticky towel that smelled like burning plastic and copper. The truck was intact, but he never drove it again. Sold it a week later for half its value. He wouldn't touch a steering wheel after that. Said something about a road sign that bled like a deer gut shot in the ribs. Said it cried from bullet holes, the blood seeping like motor oil. Said he took a picture only the phone didn't save it. It didn't freeze or crash. It burst. Melted. In his hand like a firecracker dipped in kerosene. They say Hurst still has the scar. Red circle, smooth like glass, right in the center of his palm. Looks like a ring someone pressed into his skin, but there's no raised edge, just a slick, burned crater. He stopped talking about it after 2005, moved to Louisiana. His daughter tried to reach him a few years back. Said he doesn't answer, unless you knock on his trailer 3 times. Said he lives without lights and sleeps during the day. Nobody's sure when the disappearances started, before Hurst probably. Back when that part of 180 was still flanked by abandoned ranches and rusted-out fencing. When you could drive 5 miles and not see a house or another car. The DPS put up notices after a few rigs failed to make it to Weatherford. Nothing official, just vague reminders about drowsy driving and checking tire pressure. But the trucker forums told a different story. Trucks found still idling on the shoulder. No driver, sometimes doors wide open, sometimes locked from the inside. Once, in '06, they found a rig parked neatly just off the road, key still in the ignition, and the radio looping a preacher's sermon in static, just that one sentence repeated again and again, like a warning or a plea. The blood speaks. And the road remembers. There was a boy who vanished out there in 2008, 19 years old, fresh on a cross-country move. He was driving a used Civic with 2 boxes of clothes and a duffel bag full of burned CDs. Last text sent at 11:52 p.m. Read, saw a sign bleeding. Like, actually bleeding. WTF. No one ever found the car. His mother said she dreams about him walking down a black road barefoot, Skin pale and waxy, mouth full of gravel. I didn't believe any of it until I saw the thing myself. It was October 2012. I was freelancing for a logistics magazine, doing a piece on America's haunted highways, cheap Halloween filler. Thought I'd run the mineral wells story for kicks. I rented a car, drove down from Wichita Falls, and hit 180 just after dusk. The sun was leaking orange into the sky, and the shadows stretched long, pulling the fence posts like fingers. I passed marker 279 around 7:15 p.m., rolled the windows down. Nothing but cicadas and the low hum of tires on pavement. Then, about halfway, between 281 and 282, the air changed. Not cooler, just still, like everything held its breath, even the bugs. The radio clicked off, no warning, no static, just dead silence. That's when I saw it. A road sign, old metal, bolted to a rusted pole. No words on it. Not stop, not yield, not even a speed limit. Just a flat, white square covered in holes like it had been used for target practice. But the holes wept something thick and red, slow and deliberate, running in vertical lines like tears. I stopped the car without meaning to. Engine idling, headlights pointed right at the thing. The blood, or whatever it was, caught the beams, gleamed dark as tar. I opened the door and stepped out. The gravel underfoot felt wrong soft, like the shoulder had turned to clay. The smell hit next. Not blood, not exactly. More like scorched hair and ozone, like metal melting under a blowtorch. I pulled out my phone, hands trembling. Raised it to snap a photo. The screen cracked as soon as I aimed. Not shattered, cracked, like pressure had built under the glass and split it from inside. It got hot, burned my fingers. I dropped it. Before it hit the ground, it sparked. A single violent burst like a firecracker, then a hiss and a trail of smoke. It melted into the gravel. I still have the tip of that burn mark on my thumb, a little white bubble scar that never fades. I backed away, got in the car, and kept driving. Fast. Mile markers whipped past like flickering shadows. My GPS wouldn't lock. Every turn looked the same: wire fences, dead trees, earth packed dry and colorless. I drove until I saw the Mineral Wells city limit sign, and even then I didn't stop. Slept in my car outside a gas station, doors locked, engine off. I never wrote the story. Not officially, but I did look into it more after I got back. A woman named Ellie Jensen went missing in 2010. Dispatcher for a long haul company based out of Fort Worth. Her husband said she had a thing for local folklore, liked to drive the stretches of road she routed freight through. On the night she disappeared, her car pinged a single cell tower near 180, but no one saw her after. They found a note under her pillow, handwritten in frantic block letters. It's not the road. It's what the road feeds. An old state map I found at a flea market in Weatherford listed that stretch of 180 as Cutter's Line, back in 1912. That name doesn't appear on modern maps. But I did find it in one other place in oral history, collection from the 1940s stored in the Mineral Wells library basement. A rancher described losing cattle near the bend in the road. Said they'd walk too close to the fence and just vanish, no sound, no prints. One night, he claimed he saw a line of men standing shoulder to shoulder along the road, eyes black as pitch, all wearing the same hat his father was buried in. He sold the ranch the next week. I don't drive that way anymore. Not west of town. And I've stopped trying to explain the scar to doctors or friends. They just think it's a burn, maybe from a campfire or a hot skillet. I let them believe it, but sometimes when I close my eyes, I see the road sign again. The way the blood moved. The way the air seemed to press in from every side. I hear something too beneath the silence. A low hum, almost like breathing. Like the road is waiting for something or someone. And late at night, if I listen close, I can still hear that preacher's voice from the radio. The blood speaks and the road remembers. FM 1294 outside of Lubbock is one of those roads that doesn't show up on tourist maps, but every long hauler from West Texas to the Panhandle knows it. There's nothing remarkable about it at first glance, just 26 miles of straight blacktop stretching between cotton fields, irrigation ditches, and windbreaks of scrubby mesquite. No gas stations, no motels, no rest stops. Just a two-lane lifeline through the dry gut of nowhere. But to the folks who run rigs down it after sundown, it's known by a different name, the Fade. No one agrees where that nickname came from. Some say it's because your radio goes quiet halfway through, all channels wiped to static. Others say it's the way the horizon disappears into haze, like the land itself gives up on trying to be real. I used to think it was just a legend. I hauled freight for almost 15 years across Texas and the Four Corners. Nothing special, just meats, agri-supplies, sometimes salvage loads. I'd heard the truck stop talk. Heard the story about the Vietnamese driver who parked on the shoulder to fix a fuel line and was found a week later sitting behind the wheel, eyes open, mouth full of dirt. Heard the one about the Mexican driver whose CB picked up a little girl's voice asking for her shoes back, over and over until he pulled off near mile marker 14 and vanished. His truck was found idling on the shoulder the next morning, no sign of him. I thought it was all dust-lung nonsense and fatigue-borne fever dreams. The kind of stuff lonely men see when their brains stew too long in caffeine and highway glare. Then, last spring, I pulled a load of aluminum rebar from El Paso to Amarillo. I was running behind and thought I could shave some time off by cutting up 1294 instead of following US 84 all the way. It was a clear evening when I turned off onto FM 1294 near Anton. Sky bruising purple, dust hanging over the fields like old lace. The wind was steady from the southwest, dry and low, like it always is. Nothing unusual, except for that creeping sense you get when your tires hit that particular stretch. Like driving into a vacuum. No music played on the radio. My phone lost service, and the CB, which had been chatty with chatter from 2 Oklahoma tankers near Clovis, went dead as soon as I passed mile marker 5. Not just static dead. Like the entire frequency band had flatlined. I remember rolling the window down, trying to shake off the stillness. The smell out there was different. Not dust and diesel like usual, more like old plastic and mothballs. Hard to describe. I thought I saw something up ahead, maybe 300 yards. Taillights on the shoulder, rig pulled over with hazards blinking. I slowed down out of instinct. A man helps another man on the road, that's the code, even in this age of stolen freight and scam jobs. But when I got close, I saw no one in the cab. The truck, an old Kenworth W900 weathered green paint with faded gold pinstriping, was just sitting there. Engine off. Driver door wide open. I pulled onto the shoulder behind it and hit my hazards, grabbing a flashlight from the glove box. The last rays of sun were bleeding out along the rim of the earth. You could still see pretty well, but not enough to feel comfortable. The moment I stepped out, it was like I'd walked into a mausoleum. No wind, no crickets, not even the ticking sound of a cooling engine. Just stillness, I called out. No answer. I climbed up to the cab and shined the light inside. There was a thermos in the cup holder, half full, a wallet on the dash, a folded-up paper map of Texas wedged under the visor. No blood. No broken glass. Just ... empty. I looked back toward my rig and froze. There was someone standing in the middle of the road. Not close, maybe 50 feet back, just at the edge of my headlights. A woman, pale, wearing something dark that looked like it had once been a uniform, maybe a waitress dress or old military greens. But the weird thing was the way she was standing, arms by her sides, head slightly tilted, like a mannequin someone forgot to pose properly. I called out again. Nothing. I took a step toward her, and she vanished. I don't mean she walked away, I mean she flickered, like a bad frame in a video. 1 second there, the next gone. I rushed back to my truck, slammed the door, locked it. I didn't even bother checking on the Kenworth again. I pulled out and floored it, the rig shaking a little under the sudden load. I told myself I'd call the sheriff when I hit service, report the abandoned truck. Let them deal with it. I just wanted off that stretch. The next 30 minutes stretched like hours. Darkness swallowed everything. The dust, the fields, even the sky, it was all just black. Occasionally I thought I saw lights up ahead, like brake lights or a porch lamp, but they'd vanish before I got close. My CB chirped once at mile marker 13. Just a short burst, like a signal trying to get through. Then a voice not English, not even Spanish. More like a chant, rhythmic and hollow, like someone reciting something backwards underwater. I snapped it off. And then, at mile marker 14, I heard the singing, soft, female, coming from my sleeper berth behind the cab. The curtain was drawn shut, like always. I never use the berth unless I'm parked, and I know I didn't leave anything in there that could make noise. It sounded like a lullaby, something old. I couldn't make out the words, but the tune stuck to my spine like cold glue. I kept driving, didn't pull over, didn't check. Just told myself it was the road vibrating through a loose wire or something. About 10 minutes later, the singing stopped. I drove straight to Amarillo, no stops. Pulled into the freight yard on I-40 just before midnight. When I finally felt safe, enough to get out and check the cab, I opened the sleeper. There was a bird inside. A starling, I think. Dead. Still warm, its little black eyes dull and cloudy. No sign of trauma. Just lying there on the blanket, wings folded. I left it on the dock and drove to a motel. Slept 3 hours and then drove back home without taking a single back road. A few weeks later, I mentioned it to Danny, an old friend who runs southbound loads out of Lubbock. He didn't laugh, didn't even blink. Just said, "The fade gets deeper every year." I asked him what that meant, and he just stared at his coffee and said, "Used to be only 1 or 2 weird things a season. Now you hear something every month." The old-timers say FM 1294 used to run over something older than cotton fields. There's a dip near mile 14 where the road curves slightly. Used to be a dry lake there before they paved it. Some say it was never dry, just hidden. Covered over, not with earth, but with time. Whatever's down there, beneath the soil and caliche and tar, it feeds on presence. Lives off the motion of trucks, the prayers of drivers, the hum of machines. Passing in the night, some even believe the voices on the CBs are echoes, not from this world, but the next one over. A mirror place. A place where the land remembers the people who vanished and sends them back, wrong and echoing through the wires and steel. I don't run that route anymore. Haven't since that night, but every now and then I get a call from someone who says they saw a rig just like mine parked on the shoulder near mile 14. Driver door open, engine off. No one inside. Sometimes they say there's a woman standing in the middle of the road. Sometimes they hear her singing. SH-36 between Sealy and Brenham is a stretch of Texas highway that most people wouldn't think twice about. 2-lane blacktop, scrub brush and mesquites on either side. The occasional rusted barbed wire fence, some fields left to die under the heat. A few trailer homes, the odd crooked sign for feed stores or abandoned churches with leaning steeples. Not much to see and less to remember. But if you drive it late, real late, not just after dark but past midnight, that kind of late when your eyes feel like boiled eggs and your mind starts playing tricks, there's a certain spot right past the FM 949 turnoff where old-timers say things start to get wrong. They don't call it haunted in the usual way. No ladies in white or phantom hitchhikers. Just a sound, footsteps. And they say you don't hear them until you've passed the crossroads at precisely 2:22 a.m. Not before, not after. If you're even a minute off, nothing happens. But if the time's right and you're alone, which you usually are at that hour, the sound starts slow. Like someone walking across your roof. Bootsteps at first, heavy and deliberate, and then, sometimes, a scratching. Deep, slow, measured. Not like a tree branch or wind, something alive. Something with weight. I used to run long hauls for a regional produce company out of Lulling, Central Texas. My run used to take me east on 90, sometimes up 71 toward Austin, and once in a while north through Sealy. One week in mid-August 2003, I think it was, I got assigned a late-night load that had to be in College Station by morning. They loaded me late, and I didn't get rolling until almost midnight. I remember being pissed about it. My dispatcher, Hank, didn't care, said I'd make up the time easy since traffic was dead that late. The rig was a Kenworth sleeper I'd driven maybe a dozen times. Solid truck, no issues I knew of. The CB didn't pick up much out there, but I kept it on out of habit, static mostly. The night was blacker than pitch, and the air was hot, thick, with that humid Texas kind of dark where even the bugs feel tired. I passed through Sealy around 1:50 and started up, Shore 36 heading north. I wasn't thinking about ghost stories then. I'd heard the rumors. Of course, old truckers talking at rest stops over cigarettes and black coffee, but I chalked it up to long haul. Sleep deprivation and the need to tell scary stories to break the boredom. Even the younger drivers liked to pass that one around. They'd say it like a joke. Don't cross 949 at 2:22 unless you want to make a friend. But no one ever said they'd heard it themselves. It was always someone's cousin or a guy from the Houston yard or a friend of a friend who'd climbed out of his cab and found claw marks on the roof. I didn't believe in any of it. Not then. I remember checking the dash clock around 2:19. The stretch just before the crossroads is long and straight, with nothing but pastures and low brush. There's an old gas station there, or what used to be one. Just a cracked concrete slab now, weeds growing through the cracks. You can see the post where the sign used to hang, bent backward like something big had run into it. No lights, no mailboxes. Just a few old tire ruts vanishing into the dark. I passed the intersection right as the clock ticked to 2:22. At first, it was nothing. Dead quiet. My tires hummed on the road, the engine purred steady, and the night rolled by like molasses. I thought, see? Nothing. All bullshit. Just a ghost story to keep rookies awake. And then I heard it, a single thump. Sharp, like something heavy had landed on the cab roof just above the windshield. I froze, my hands tightening on the wheel. My first thought was maybe something fell from a tree, except there weren't any trees overhead. Nothing taller than a fence post in either direction. Then came the footsteps. Slow, deliberate. 1, 2, 3. Right above me, along the roofline, as if someone were walking heel to toe across the top of the cab. I killed the music, rolled down the windows and listened. Nothing outside, just the steady sound of whatever was up there. I flicked on the overhead interior light, looked up through the windshield. Nothing visible. No shadows, no movement. I checked the mirrors, nobody behind me, not even headlights. I told myself it was an animal. A raccoon, maybe. An owl somehow. That made sense, right? Then came the scratching. Not frantic, like claws scrabbling. No, this was slow, methodical, like a hand or paw dragging across metal. I swear I could feel it reverberating through the frame, a deep, almost wet sound. The kind that settles in your bones. I kept driving. What else was I going to do? Stop and get out? Hell no, not out there. Not when I couldn't see what I was dealing with. The sound kept on. I don't know how long it lasted. Maybe 5 minutes. Maybe an hour. Time gets slippery in moments like that. Every few minutes, another thump. Another set of footsteps. Sometimes light. Sometimes so heavy I could feel the suspension shift. Made it to the truck stop just outside of Brenham around 4:15. I parked under the lights near other rigs. Safety in numbers. I shut off the engine and sat there for a while, breathing, listening. Nothing. No more footsteps. No more scratching. Just my own heart kicking in my chest like a mule dot. Eventually, I climbed out and looked. The roof of the sleeper was scored. 4 long, parallel grooves, each about 4 inches apart. Too far for raccoon paws. Too narrow for anything mechanical. The paint was stripped down to the metal, and in some places the metal itself was gouged. Deep enough to catch a fingernail. I walked around the truck twice. No signs of birds, no branches, no debris. The cab was clean. The area around the stop was gravel and concrete, no dirt, no footprints. I asked the guy at the counter if they had any cameras outside. He looked at me funny and said yeah, but they hadn't worked in months. I delivered the load and drove back a different route. Took the longer loop through Hempstead. I never went near that stretch again, not after dark. A few months later, I heard from another driver, Tommy Biggs, guy out of Pasadena Yard, that he'd hit the same stretch around the same time of night. Said he thought someone was riding up there, like a damn squatter or something. He pulled off near a ditch to check and found the same kind of scratches. Quit the company 2 weeks later. Some nights I think back on it. Try to rationalize it. Sleep deprivation, highway hypnosis, maybe a weird vibration that sounded like footsteps, maybe. But those scratches were real. I saw them, ran my fingers through them. And the feeling I had that night, this pressing, oppressive sense that whatever was up there wasn't just walking. It was listening, waiting. Truckers still talk about it. Not in public, usually. But if you sit long enough at one of the late-night diners off I-10 or pull into a rest stop past 3 a.m., someone will bring it up. They'll talk about the sound, the weight, the scratching, and the time, 2:22 a.m. Always the same. Always on SH 36. And every now and then, someone goes missing on that road. A truck found idling in a ditch, cab empty. Sleeper door open, nothing stolen. No sign of the driver. But if you climb up there, if you're brave enough, you'll find the same 4 scratches, clean and perfect, like whatever it was got tired of walking and decided to go inside. Highway 287 through Wichita Falls feels different when the sun drops out of the sky. The land out there doesn't just get quiet, it seems to fold in on itself. Like the flat stretches of North Texas are holding their breath. Drivers who pass through after dark often say something feels off, though they can't put their finger on it. The road isn't particularly winding. It's straight as a gun barrel for long miles, cut clean through cattle land and oil field stretches that shimmer during the day and blacken into nothing at night. It's not the kind of road you stop on. Not unless your truck breaks down. Not unless something breaks you down. That stretch through Wichita Falls has stories. The old-timers at the Love's truck stop near Henrietta, where 287 doglegs north. They'll tell you if you ask, though. Most won't unless you catch them just drunk enough to forget they're not supposed to talk. Not because they've sworn it off or anything like that. More like they just don't want to think about it again. What's the point in remembering things no one else believes? The one I heard came from a guy named Bill, long-haul driver. Big fellow with a bad limp and a left eye that didn't focus right. Said it got messed up in a jackknife accident near Amarillo. He'd been hauling feed out of Kansas and heading down toward Abilene when it happened. Said if it weren't for that crash, he wouldn't have stopped long enough to hear what happened to Terry Caldwell. Terry was another driver. Ran reefer freight meat mostly. Quiet guy, mid-40s, been driving since his 20s. Real dependable. Never missed a run. Liked to keep to himself. Bill met him a few times at rest stops and yards, traded coffee and smokes and the kind of small talk that truckers make to stay human between towns. Said Terry never had a bad word to say about anyone. The kind of guy who could spend 12 hours in a cab and not lose his mind. So when Terry went missing, just vanished, people noticed. The company tried to say it was a GPS error, that maybe he'd pulled off the highway and forgot to check in. But Bill said the weird thing was his rig kept moving for another 80 miles after his last call, like something was still driving it. It happened in early October, just after the first cold front came down from Oklahoma. Terry had called in around 2:45 a.m., said he was about 15 miles south of Wichita Falls, hauling a load of pork bellies to a warehouse in Fort Worth. He didn't say much, just that he was tired. A little creeped out by the fog rolling in across the fields. It looks like smoke, he said. Like the ground's on fire, but it doesn't go anywhere. Just hangs there. Dispatch asked if he wanted to pull over, rest a bit. He laughed, said he'd be fine, just needed to keep the radio on and stay awake. He never checked in again. The truck was found idling on the shoulder just north of Electra. The doors were locked from the inside. Cab was empty. No signs of struggle, no blood, nothing stolen. His logbook was still on the dash, halfway filled out. Terry's thermos was still hot, like he'd just stepped out for a piss and vanished. That might have been the end of it, just another weird disappearance on a long stretch of lonely road. Happens more often than you'd think. But then someone found this dashcam footage. Terry had one of those digital cams that records continuously and loops over itself every 48 hours. They pulled the footage from the cloud backup. It started normally enough, radio playing low, Terry. Humming now and then, the headlights eating up blacktop mile after mile. At first, there was nothing out of place. But around 2:20 a.m., you can see something. Figures. Not close. Just ... there. Out in the fields, maybe 100 yards off the road. The headlights catch them for a second and they don't look right. Not like deer or fence posts or any of the things you expect to flash by in the night. These were people. Or looked like people. Standing still, not walking, not waving. Just there, watching. Terry didn't seem to notice at first. Maybe he was too tired. Maybe he thought they were trees. Or hay bales. But the camera caught it. Every few minutes, more of them appeared. 1 minute you'd see a pair, then 4, then 7. All standing, spaced apart like fence posts. And they got closer. Not walking, not moving, just appearing. Like the moment they left the edge of the camera's view, they'd reappear 20 feet closer. Always just far enough to be half lost in the dark. Shapes in the fog, eyes catching the light for a second too long. And they weren't normal either. Their proportions were off. Arms too long, necks bent at weird angles. One of them, Bill, swears this was on the tape, had no face. Just smooth skin, like a peeled hard-boiled egg, but the camera still picked up eye shine. At 2:41, Terry starts to panic. You hear it in his voice. He's whispering to himself. They're not moving. Why aren't they moving? The headlights catch 4 of them standing in a ditch right at the edge of the highway. They don't flinch, don't blink. Just watch as the truck barrels past. Terry starts breathing hard, like he's trying not to cry. The radio goes static for a moment. Then he says something. It's hard to hear, but Bill remembered it. I don't think they're people. At 2:44, the dash cam freezes. Just a flicker. Less than a second. Then it cuts to static. Nothing after that. When they pulled the truck off the highway the next morning, the inside was ice cold. That's what the trooper said. Freezing, like someone had left the door open in January. But the windows were sealed, no mechanical issues. Thermostat still showed 73 degrees. No explanation. That's when the other stories started surfacing. Drivers talking in hushed tones at rest stops. Folks who'd seen the watchers too, always out there beyond the lights. Some said they only saw them when they were alone. Others said they felt them before they saw them, a pressure behind the eyes. A sense that something was thinking at them. One guy, a tanker driver named Sal, claimed he got out of his cab to check a blown tire around 3 a.m. near Iowa Park. Said he heard whispering coming from the tall grass. No wind, just voices too low to make out. Said he turned around and one of them was standing on the other side of the highway, not crossing, not waving for help, just watching. He quit driving a week later. No one's got a good explanation. Some say it's a military thing, some experimental camouflage or psychological warfare experiment that went wrong back in the Cold War. Others blame old Comanche burial grounds, ley lines, hell, even UFOs. But none of that feels right. Not to me. Bill said it's older than that. Said he talked to an old Choctaw man once at a trading post south of Vernon. Guy didn't blink when Bill described the watchers. Just nodded and said, they've always been there. That land was never ours to take. Bill doesn't drive nights anymore. Neither do I, to tell the truth. Not on 287, because the last thing Terry's dash cam showed right before it cut out wasn't a watcher. It was him, standing in the middle of the road, frozen, eyes glassy, lips moving like he was trying to scream but couldn't, pale as moonlight. And behind him, rising from the fog, were dozens more, all standing still, all staring straight into the lens. They weren't people, and they're getting closer. FM 2514 near Parker wasn't the kind of road you'd think twice about during the day. Just a stretch of two-lane blacktop running east of Plano, winding its way past horse farms, dried-out pastures, and a few old properties holding out against the creeping sprawl. The asphalt had gone gray in the sun, shoulders crumbly with old gravel, and the trees, mostly cedar and oak, sat back politely during the daylight. Not exactly scenic, but not ugly either. Just one of those forgettable country routes that show up on Google Maps when you take the Savoyed highways option. But folks around Parker, at least the ones who'd been there long enough to know better, tended to avoid it after dark. They wouldn't talk much about it. Just give you a look if you brought it up. Maybe change the subject. Maybe laugh too hard and say something like, "Shoot, I just don't like driving those country roads at night." Like it was about deer or potholes or drunks. But it wasn't. Not really. And if you kept asking, eventually you'd hear about the tree line. How it looked like the woods leaned in at night. Just a trick of the headlights, sure, or your imagination. But it didn't feel like a trick when you were out there. It felt like being watched. Like the road itself was being swallowed by the land around it, inch by inch. That stretch near Parker had taken on a sort of folklore status, especially after what happened to Greg Fenley. Greg wasn't a superstitious guy. 42, divorced, ex-military, no kids. Worked for the county utilities division, mostly underground cable checks and meter replacements. He liked the hours, liked the solitude. He drove an old white F-150 with a toolbox bolted to the back and a police scanner. Mounted under the dash, mostly out of habit. Carried a Glock in the glove compartment, but never mentioned it. He lived in Lucas, not far from Parker, and drove FM 2514 almost every day. Didn't think much of it. But one Tuesday night in late September, he was coming back from a late call kind of outage near Lavin, and took the road home like always. The sun had gone down around 7:30. He'd gotten coffee from a gas station in Wiley and lit up a cigarette about halfway between Stinson Road and that weird fork where the asphalt splits toward the old feed mill. He was driving slow, about 45, window cracked, radio off. Just letting the night settle in. That's when he hit something. He didn't see it, just a thump, hard enough to rattle the suspension and jolt his coffee out of the cup holder. The truck skidded a little. Not much. He braked and came to a stop. Maybe 20 yards past the impact point. He figured it was a deer. Maybe a hog. Common enough out there. He cursed, unbuckled, and stepped out, flashlight in hand. The night was thick with crickets and wind. The trees rustled on either side, darker than the sky. He walked back along the shoulder, sweeping the light across the pavement and grass. Nothing. No blood. No fur. No sign he'd hit anything at all. That's when he got the feeling. You know that moment when you're alone in the woods, and something changes? The air goes still. The insects stop. Your breath sounds too loud. It's like everything's listening. That's what Greg felt. He turned slowly, light shaking in his hand. The truck sat there behind him, engine idling, driver's side door still open. Then he saw the footprints, not boot prints, not animal tracks. Bare feet, human, muddy, small. They circled the cab, not once, not twice, 5 times, maybe 6. Perfect. Loops in the dirt and gravel, close enough that if someone had been walking there while he sat inside, they could have touched the mirror. Looked in the window, but there were no tracks leading to the truck, none leading away, just that tight, perfect circle. Like something had appeared and walked, but never came or went. He backed up, heart pounding, suddenly aware of how quiet it had gotten. The flashlight flickered, then steadied. He swept it across the trees. Nothing. No eye shine. No movement. But he could feel something, like a weight behind the silence, a pressure on his chest. He turned back to the truck, climbed in fast, slammed the door. That's when he saw the message. The windshield was dusty. Always was. He didn't wash the truck much. But now, scrawled across the outside of the hood letters, traced and clean. Lines, as if by a fingertip, were the words. Stay on the RO. He didn't wait. He jammed it in drive and peeled off, tires spitting gravel, barely looking in the mirror. Made it home in 20 minutes. Drank 3 fingers of bourbon and locked every door in the house. He didn't sleep. Didn't tell anyone for a week, but it got worse. He started seeing the footprints again. In his driveway, in his backyard, once under the window of his bedroom. Always small, always barefoot, always muddy, but never a track leading in, never one leading out. He called a buddy from the sheriff's office. They came out, didn't find anything. Just told him maybe it was neighborhood kids, maybe animals. Maybe he needed to get some rest, but then his security camera caught it. 2 weeks after the night on FM 2514, he checked the footage from the porch cam. Midnight. Motion alert. He saw himself sleeping in the living room recliner he'd started, leaving all the lights on. Nothing for a while, then the image shifted. From the edge of the frame, someone stepped into view. Barefoot. Mud from the knees down. Head tilted at a natural angle, like the neck was broken. Couldn't see the face hair was hanging down. But the figure walked slowly across the yard, stopped at the window. and stood there for 6 hours. Didn't move, just stood there at dawn. The figure turned and walked back toward the trees. Still no tracks, just that same silence. That same eerie sense of watching. Greg moved out a week later, took leave from work, went to stay with a cousin in Tyler, but he couldn't sleep. The thing followed. He saw it near the barn, saw it in the rearview mirror. One night, he woke up to find muddy footprints on the inside of his bedroom door. The sheriff found his truck on FM 2514 3 weeks after that. Parked on the shoulder, engine still running. Driver's side door wide open. No sign of a struggle. No blood. No signs of a wreck. But the footprints were back. Circling the cab. 7 loops this time. Maybe 8. And across the hood, scrawled deeper, like with a nail or a bone. You left the ROD. They never found him. His phone was on the seat. His Glock still in the glove box. But he was gone. People drive slower on 2514 now, especially at night, and no one stops if they can help it. Folks say the trees really do lean in, like they're trying to block something out or keep something in. And every now and then, someone reports seeing a figure on the shoulder, small, barefoot, just standing there, watching, waiting, and always surrounded by perfect muddy loops. State Highway 222 cuts through Haskell County like a scar. It runs flat and narrow between mesquite scrub and brittle prairie, 2-lane blacktop barely held together by asphalt patches and long-forgotten county maintenance. It's the kind of road where even the wind seems to forget to blow. Locals use it to get between Rochester and Monday, or to cut southeast toward Throckmorton if they're feeling brave or bored. But truckers, well, they've always been uneasy about 222. Not that it ever made headlines. Nothing ever does out here. Too far from Dallas to matter, too dry and forgotten for anyone to care. Still, every now and then, a trucker will say something on the CB, usually late at night, when the sky is pressed down with clouds and the land feels like it's holding its breath. That's when they talk about the trucks. The story that stuck. With me came from a long hauler named Owen Ray, guy out of Shreveport. Ran loads between the oil fields in the Permian and refineries near Houston. He wasn't the type to scare easy. Barrel-chested, gray-bearded, and quiet. Kept a picture of. His wife taped to the dash, wore a St. Christopher medal even though he hadn't seen the inside of a church in 20 years. I met him at a truck stop outside Stanford back in '07. I was headed north to Wichita Falls in a rented Ford. He was refueling, smoking a Marlboro, and staring hard at the southern horizon like it owed him money. We got to talking. That's when he told me about the night he saw the convoy. He'd been on 222 heading eastbound, hauling pipe for a drilling site near a spearmint. Left late, somewhere around 1:30 in the morning, thinking he'd make better time with the roads empty. It was the tail end of August, hot enough that the pavement shimmered even in moonlight. There wasn't another soul on that stretch. No headlights. Behind him, none up ahead. Just miles of flatland broken only by rusted barbed wire and the occasional cattle. Skeleton picked clean. He said he first noticed something strange around the intersection with FM 618. His headlights flickered for a second, just a blink, but enough to make him tap the brake. He thought it might be electrical. His rig was old, a 98 Peterbilt with more quirks than a drunk uncle. But then his radio crackled, not with chatter, but static. Thick, wet static like it had weight. Then silence. Not the peaceful kind something. About it was off, like the sound had been sucked out of the air. That's when he saw the lights. No, not lights. Shadows. He couldn't explain it at first, just that the darkness ahead seemed to get darker. Shapes moving where nothing should be, like silhouettes cut from the night itself. He eased off the gas, squinting. And then they appeared, a convoy of trucks, 6 of them, identical, rusted semis, long-nosed and wide, their trailers mismatched. And ancient, no headlights, no taillights, no engine hum, no vibration through the road. Just rolling forward, slow and smooth, like they were gliding. He said he pulled over instinctively, unsure if they were stalled or if he was hallucinating. His heart was thudding in his ears, sweat stinging his eyes despite the AC. They passed. Him, one after the other, maybe 20 feet between each, tires turning but not making a sound. No logos, no license plates. Nothing but rust and grime and those long trailers sealed tight. But the worst part, the part that broke something in him, was the windshields. No one behind them. He swore to me, swore on his wife's grave, that he could see straight through the cabs. No drivers. No steering wheels, no dashboards, just emptiness. Not dark, not obscured empty. As if the trucks weren't even hollow, but voided. Like shadows projected from something else, and hanging. From each rearview mirror, a noose. Thin, worn rope, old-fashioned, the kind you'd see in some black and white photo from a lynching in the 1930s. Each noose swayed gently, not with the motion of the trucks, but like they were being disturbed by some unseen breath, some airless. Wind inside the cabs. Owen sat frozen in his seat until the last truck had passed. Then, without thinking, he threw it into gear and followed them. Not out of curiosity, he told me, but something deeper. Like a hook had been set in his guts and was reeling him forward. The road stretched on, straight and narrow, but the trucks never got farther ahead. No matter how much speed he picked up, 50, 60, 70, they stayed exactly the same. Distance in front of him. Still no sound, no heat coming off the engines. Just those dead, rusted hulks and no swaying nooses. Then the sky changed. It was gradual at first. He noticed the stars were gone. Not covered by clouds, just gone. Like the sky had been scrubbed clean. Then the moon, which had been low and yellow to his left, seemed to slide backward behind him. The horizon warped subtly, a bend in the road that didn't make sense. The land on either side went from dry brush to black soil. Nothing grew, no fences, no cattle. Just dead land and the endless convoy. He said it felt like he wasn't in Texas. Anymore, not anywhere really. He turned on the interior cab lights, checked his GPS. The unit flickered, then showed no data. Just static and coordinates that didn't make sense. Long strings of 7s and 0s. Then the radio came back. Not. With voices. With a song, a scratchy old country tune, something he couldn't name. Not even lyrics, just a slide guitar and a sorrowful whistle that cut through his chest like a blade. And beneath that, almost too quiet to hear a voice. Female, maybe. Crying, not sobbing. Just weeping. Soft, endless weeping that rose and fell like waves. He was white-knuckling the wheel when he realized the trucks had stopped. Dead center in the road. All 6, lined up like cattle at a slaughterhouse. No brake lights, no signs of life. He slammed. On his own brakes, skidded a little, heart trying to punch through his ribs. And then the last truck in line closest to him dash opened. Not the cab. The trailer. Its back doors groaned outward, slow and deliberate, like something inside was pushing. Owen said he doesn't remember what came out. Not exactly. He just remembers cold. Bone-deep cold that fogged his windows and coated his teeth. With frost. He remembers the smell of copper and wet dirt. He remembers a shape, something tall, impossibly thin, walking on all fours with its head twisted backward. Its eyes were where its shoulders should be. Its face was stitched shut. He didn't wait. He threw the truck into reverse, tires screaming, and didn't stop until he hit the ditch. Got the rig turned around, tore back down 222 doing 80. Never looked back. By the time he hit the intersection with 277, the stars were back. The moon was where it should be. His GPS rebooted. The radio played normal static. And his dash clock had jumped ahead 2 hours. He reported it to nobody. Just got to the yard in Houston, dropped the load, and called it quits. Retired the next week. Sold the Peterbilt for parts. When he finished telling me this, Owen lit another cigarette and stared into the dark. I asked him if he ever told anyone else. He shook his head. Said he knew no one would believe him. Maybe he didn't believe it himself. But he hadn't taken that highway since. Swore he never would again. I didn't believe him, not really, but something about his voice stuck with me. Not fear regret. Like he hadn't just seen something, but understood something. Something he was never meant to. Years passed. Then, just a few months ago, I drove 222 myself. Coming back from Throckmorton late at night. Took a wrong turn and ended up on that long, flat stretch. Nothing but blacktop and mesquite. I was tired, trying to stay awake. The sky was overcast, no moon. I had the radio off. That's when I saw the taillights. 6 red dots, barely visible, far ahead. I thought I imagined them, until they started moving. And for just a moment, maybe. A trick of the eye, I saw something swaying from the rear view of the last truck. Looked like rope. Loop 1604 wraps around San Antonio like a noose, wide and gray and pulsing with the kind of nervous traffic that never seems to sleep. It's not like I hadn't driven it 100 times. I lived in Chavano Park for 8 years, commuted downtown. For work, visited my mother in Holotes, spent weekends cutting across the north side to reach Canyon Lake or out toward Seguin. You get to know every bend, every overpass, every poorly lit exit and dusty shoulder. But none of that prepares you for the stretch between Culebra and Nacogdoches after midnight. Locals will talk about it if you catch them in the right mood, usually. Half drunk and glancing over their shoulder like they're afraid something followed them out of the dark. I used to think it was just ghost story nonsense, the kind old-timers pass around like worn-out playing cards. Until it happened to me. Until I saw him. I was driving back from a failed job interview in Austin, teaching gig. I had the experience. But the principal said I lacked warmth. That's fine. I didn't want to teach middle school brats anyway. The day had dragged flat tires, dead cell battery, a busted gas cap, and I hit the outskirts of San Antonio just after midnight. The headlights of my old Chevy Silverado cast that weird yellowish glow on the pavement, and the radio was stuck between stations, filling the cab with this faint, whispery static like something breathing. That's when I saw him the first time. He was walking along the shoulder just past Houseman Road. Pale jeans, black hoodie pulled up tight, limping like he'd rolled his ankle. I slowed, thinking maybe he needed help. This was a bad stretch. Not much lighting and no sidewalks. But something about the way he moved gave me a cold prickling at the base of my neck. His head never turned. He just kept walking, the limp. Exaggerated like it was part of a performance, like someone imitating an injury they didn't understand. I passed him and sped up, told myself it was nothing. Just a drunk, maybe homeless, maybe both. 5 minutes later, I saw him again. Just before Bitters Road. Same clothes. Same limp, same posture. There's no way he could have gotten ahead of me. No turnoffs, no buses, no parked cars. I'd been watching the road and the shoulder the whole time. But there he was again, limping. In that odd, rhythmic sway that made my skin crawl. I passed him, slower this time. The hood of his sweatshirt was pulled so far forward I couldn't see his face, but I swear to God I felt him looking at me. Felt it like heat against my neck. At Blanco Road he showed up again. I pulled over. Not hard, just eased onto the gravel like I'd made up my mind without realizing it. Something in me needed to know. I left the engine running, headlights on, and stepped out. My boots crunched the grit. The air was heavy, warm, still. The guy was just ahead, walking like he didn't even notice I was there. "Hey," I called. He stopped, didn't turn, didn't speak. I approached slowly, careful, like you do with a wounded animal. When I was about 10 feet away, he finally turned around. And that's when I saw his face, or the absence of it. His skin was pale, almost translucent under the sodium lights, and his eyes were too wide. Not just startled wide like they had no lids, ringed with something dark, something wet. His mouth hung open like he was gasping, but no breath came. I remember thinking he looked like someone halfway through drowning. And then he spoke. "You? Can't leave," he said, voice thin and choked like it came from the bottom of a well. "Not till it finishes riding with you." And then he vanished. I don't mean he walked away. I don't mean I blinked and he was gone. I mean 1 second he was standing there in front of me, and the next he just wasn't. Like someone had erased him from the world with one sweep of a brush. No sound, no light. Just gone. I got back in the truck shaking, drove fast. Too fast. Every street light seemed too far apart, every shadow too deep. I told myself I was imagining it. Sleep deprivation, heat stroke, something, but the radio wouldn't work. Not even static now. Just silence, like the whole dash had died, and the rearview mirror, something was wrong with it. Every time I glanced back, I saw a shape, not clear, not solid, but there, sitting in the middle of the back seat, hunched, forward like it was watching me drive. At first, I thought it was just a trick of the light, maybe my jacket slumped weird. But then it moved. Every time I tried to catch it in a full glance, it melted into shadow, but it never left. I felt its weight, felt the shift in the suspension, the cold spot behind my seat. My hands started to ache from gripping the wheel so tight. I remember thinking, don't stop, don't talk, don't look back again. I drove the loop twice, maybe 3 times, I don't know. The exits blurred, every sign looked the same. I tried taking the ramp toward I-10, but it fed me back to 1604. Tried turning off at Hubner Dead End Road, chain-link fence I swore wasn't there before. Every path circled back. Every off-ramp brought me back onto the loop like it was stitched to itself. Like I wasn't driving a highway anymore, but a track in some sick carousel, and the figure in the back seat? It got closer by the 3rd loop. It wasn't just a blur. I could hear it, breathing, wet, shallow, urgent, like someone drowning in slow motion. The smell of mold and old river water filled the cab. My vision tunneled. I remember sweat dripping into my eyes, but I was freezing. My fingers were numb, and I realized this is what it meant. That thing, that pale-faced echo of something once human. It didn't just haunt the road. It rode it, hitched itself to anyone dumb enough to notice it. And once it was in your car, it didn't leave until it wanted to. I passed out somewhere near the military base. Woke up at dawn, engine cold, parked in a gravel lot I didn't remember pulling into. No GPS signal, phone battery still dead. But the air was lighter, birds chirping, truck empty. For a second, I thought it was over. Just a dream until I checked my rear view. A handprint, damp, smudged across the inside of the back window. 4 long fingers, no thumb dot. I never took that road again. Found new ways across town. Longer, more traffic, didn't care. Sold the truck 6 months later when it started stalling near loop entrances. Buyer called me 3 days later, said the rearview mirror kept falling off, said the upholstery smelled like river rot. I hung up. That was 3 years ago. But sometimes when I'm driving past the edge of town and the moon's low, I see him limping along the shoulder. Same jeans, same hoodie. Still walking, still waiting for someone to notice him. And I pray every damn time that they don't stop. They call it the burning road. Not because of the heat, it's hot as hell out there anyway, especially in July, but because of the smell. A charred, chemical stink that doesn't belong to gasoline or old tires or roadkill. It's the kind of smell that sticks in your teeth, sour and sharp, like you've been chewing burnt plastic and metal filings. That stretch of SH 85 between Big Wells and Dilley is only about 20 miles long, but in the right conditions, it feels like 100. No cell towers, no gas stations. Just flat country and mesquite trees, scrubby brush pushing up against. Barbed wire fences and long, low shadows that stretch across the asphalt in the late afternoon like fingers trying to catch your tire's dot. It started with the truckers. The ones who drove at night mostly. You'd hear them talking at the pump or under the orange sodium lights at the truck stop in Dilley, their voices low, like they didn't want to say it too loud. They'd seen something. Some said fire in the mirrors. Just a glimpse at first. A flicker behind them, licking up from the road like flames caught in a heat mirage. They'd pull over, thinking maybe a brake line had burst, maybe the trailer had caught, but there'd be nothing, not even smoke. Just that smell. And then the tires, always the tires. Melted, warped like they'd driven through lava. But there was never a fire. Never any sign of what caused it. One guy, Marcus Drevlin, tried to record it. He drove that route every week, Houston to Laredo, hauling appliances. He was one of those stubborn old hands who didn't believe in ghosts or demons. Or whatever you want to call it. He thought maybe it was a gas leak underground or some kind of prank. One of those social media kids setting tires on fire and vanishing before anyone caught them. So he rigged a camera, duct taped it to the side mirror on the driver's side, aimed it back at the road, cinched it to his dash cam so it would record in tandem. He made it to Dilley, dropped his load, and pulled into the lot behind the Taco Palenque. When he checked the footage, what he saw made him throw up in the gravel. The video starts normal. Wind noise, highway hum, the rhythmic clatter of diesel tires over the joints in the road. Then the camera shakes. Not from wind, something else. Like the mirror is vibrating, or the whole truck is shifting slightly side to side. Then the smell. Hitsy says so on the audio. You can hear him say, "What the hell is that? Smells like ... burning hair." The video goes grainy, almost like interference, then clears. The road behind him is ... wrong, melting. Not steaming or smoking, but liquefying like candle wax. The asphalt bubbles and sags, and underneath, there's movement. Something pale, wet, eyes. Not just one set, dozens. Maybe hundreds. Some wide and round like a deer's, some long and vertical like a goat's. Blinking, watching, all buried. Under that boiling road like they're waiting to be born. Marcus never drove that route again. In fact, he stopped driving altogether. Sold his rig, moved up to Abilene to live with his sister. He won't talk about it now, not even to old friends. They say he flinches if he smells anything burning. The state sent a crew out to check the road last year. Some kind of geological survey team. I met one of them, a guy named Harold, in a diner off I-35, said he was from San Marcos, used to do fracking site assessments. He was pale as a sheet and hadn't touched his burger. I asked him what they found. We drilled core samples. He said, expected clay, limestone maybe. Typical for the region. But there was something else. Layers of something black and rubbery about 10 feet down. Looked like flesh. Dense, like cartilage or tendons. One of the guys touched it, said it pulsed. I laughed. Told him he was pulling my leg. He just looked at me, dead serious. It pulsed, like a heartbeat. They left the site the next day. Reported it as inconclusive, blamed the equipment, filed it under geological anomaly. The kind of bureaucratic language that makes things disappear. That stretch of road never gets resurfaced. The county claims it doesn't need it, but you can tell they're lying. There are cracks, huge ones, some wide enough to rattle a trailer. If you hit them wrong, and that smell, that smell. Strongest just past the halfway point between Big Wells and Dilley, where the brush gets dense on either side and there's a lone rest area with a rusted picnic table and a dry fountain. Nobody stops there anymore. Not even the migrant buses. People have gone missing on that road. Not a lot, but enough that it shows up in local forums. Mostly drifters, hitchhikers, night drivers. One woman, Lana Ruiz, was driving back from Eagle. Passed late one night after visiting her sister. Called her husband from Cotulla, said she'd be home in an hour. She never made it. Her car was found a week later, parked perfectly on the shoulder just south of FM 140. Keys in the ignition, lights off. Not a scratch on it. But her phone was fused to the dashboard like it had melted. Her purse was still there, seatbelt unbuckled, door ajar like she'd just stepped out. But there were no footprints, just tar. Thick globs of it, black and shiny, leading off the road into the brush. Like something dragged across the surface before slithering into the mesquite. I drove it once. Against every instinct, every scrap of sense. It was around dusk, mid-July, sun sinking low and painting the sky blood orange. I'd just come from a job in Laredo and didn't want to stay overnight. It was supposed to be a straight shot. I thought maybe all the stories were just that, stories. You grow up in South Texas, you hear a lot of them. La Llorona, the Devil's Backbone, the Woman in White. All noise. But halfway between Big Wells and Dilley, my radio cut out. Not static, just silence. Like the air got sucked out of the cab. My GPS started glitching. It spun in place, like the truck was turning even though I was driving straight. Then came the smell. Sweet and chemical at first, like burning sugar. Then acrid, sharper, like burning plastic and meat. I gagged, pulled over. Thought maybe I'd hit something. That's when I saw the fire. Only it wasn't fire. Not really. It shimmered, low and blue, crawling across the surface of the road behind me. It didn't move like flame. It moved like fingers, reaching. Searching. I didn't get out. I couldn't. I don't know if it was fear or something else. Like something was holding me in place. I looked in the mirror, and for just a second, just one, I saw something rise from the road. A shape, tall, thin, no features. Just a head, long and bald, with two huge white eyes. And it looked at me, really looked, like it knew me. Like it had been waiting for me. Then the radio came back. Willie Nelson's voice cut through the silence like a knife. I hit the gas and didn't stop until I reached Dilley. When I looked in the mirror again, it was gone. But the smell clung to me for days, in my hair, my clothes, my skin. My wife noticed it first, said I smelled like something dead. I never drove that road again. I go 40 miles out of my way now, even if it costs me hours. And I'm not the only one. More and more truckers are rerouting, saying their rigs won't handle it. But that's not it. Not really. They're scared. Because deep down, we all know roads aren't just slabs of concrete and asphalt. They're paths. And some paths weren't meant to be driven. Some were meant to lead you somewhere else. Somewhere underneath. Somewhere. Waiting. And once you feel the road pulse beneath your wheels, just once, you'll never forget it. Because something down there knows you're coming.